Chapter 39. Did he save you in passing? Chapter 39. Did he save you in passing? Watch out. Sensing the approaching danger, Jun Linyuan frowned. Without knowing it, he pulled Feng Wu to one side. The next moment he was fighting the python head-on. Although Feng Wu was saved from the python's attack, Jun Linyuan hadn't exactly been gentle with his pull. He tossed Feng Wu aside as soon as she was out of harm's way. Thump! Feng Wu landed face down in the mud. Yuminji, who had arrived on the scene right after the python, watched this in amazement. His fine eyebrows creased and his bright eyes had a confused look in them as he mumbled, "That can't be right. He saved that girl? That's just not something Jun Linyuan would do. Why did he do that?" Deeming himself Jun Linyuan's ultimate rival since they were little, Yuminji was baffled. Feng Wu turned her head involuntarily at his voice. Many years later, Yuminji would still remember when he met Feng Wu for the first time. She turned around in her confused state, and in her disguise she looked as ordinary as any other teenage girl out there. She was spitting dirt out of her mouth, together with a few bits of straw. It was the most sorry and adorable picture ever. Ha 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 ha, Yuminji guffawed mercilessly. Feng Wu turned her resentful gaze on him right away. Their eyes met, and the next second, Yuminji realized that he had just exposed himself. He cried out and dashed off right away, hiding himself in one of the trees. Feng Wu was speechless. While Feng Wu was still trying to figure out what was going on, Fairy Muyao glared at her and said, "Don't for 1 minute think that His Royal Highness saved you because you're special. Trust me when I tell you that he only did it in passing. It was nothing more." Feng Wu said, "Whatever. What kind of reply is that? Humph. His Royal Highness doesn't like you and he never will. He only saved you because it was convenient." Fairy Muyao clenched her fists, as if trying to convince herself. Feng Wu only found the fairy ridiculous. Spitting out the mud in her mouth, she retorted, "Has he ever saved you in passing then? Bullseye." Fairy Muyao felt like she had just been smashed in the chest by a hammer and went stiff. Staring at Feng Wu, she couldn't think of anything to say in return. When she finally recovered from the initial shock, she stormed off right away. Her footsteps were exceedingly loud, which demonstrated how infuriated she was. Behind Fairy Muyao, Feng Wu stuck out her tongue. "Yep, that's how I rock. Bite me." Now far away on a branch, Yuminji bit his lip, his amorous eyes darting around. The fairy was right. Jun Linyuan had indeed pulled that ordinary girl away from danger. Was she somehow special to Jun Linyuan? Yuminji examined Feng Wu up and down. She had a face that looked no different from the next girl. She was so slight that the wind could blow her away. And she had no spiritual essence or cultivation whatsoever. If he had to say something nice about her, he supposed that she did have very clear, bright eyes. She was Jun Linyuan's type? Seriously? Rubbing his chin, Yuminji frowned and found it hard to believe. His elders arrived at that moment. After jumping into the old tree that was so thick it would take 10 people to join hands all the way around its trunk, the head of the elders asked Yuminji, "Young master, what's bothering you?" Yuminji sighed. "Your Excellency, do you still remember the oath I took?" Chapter 40. How can I bring myself to do it? Chapter 40. How can I bring myself to do it? The head of the elder stared at his young master with a blank face. The teenager had made way too many oaths for him to remember. Yuminji sighed again and murmured, "I swore on 2 musts. I must take everything that Jun Linyuan has and I must steal the hearts of all the women Jun Linyuan likes." The head of the elders was still confused. "So you're saying?" Rubbing his chin, Yuminji scanned Feng Wu up and down with his eyes and frowned again. "It's about Jun Linyuan's taste. Gosh, look at that girl. How can I bring myself to do it?" There was only one word for her looks, her figure, and her capabilities. Worthless. Sigh. Staring at Feng Wu, Yuminji heaved a sigh and sounded like he was struggling with himself. "If Jun Linyuan can do it, so can I. I'll just close my eyes. Yes." The head of the elders looked at Yuminji sympathetically. "Young master, how about?" "No." Yuminji stared at the elder, his big, pretty eyes opening wide. "You weren't there. You have no idea how humiliating it was." The head of the elders looked utterly baffled. Jun Linyuan stepped on my head. Twice. And he forgot my full name. He doesn't know what my full name is. Blue veins popped on Yu Minji's forehead. He regarded Jun Linyuan as his ultimate rival, but the guy couldn't even remember his name. Yu Minji drew in his breath, feeling humiliated. The head of the elders watched as his young master hopped around like a child. Sigh. I don't care. Jun Linyuan smacked the tree trunk in frustration. This time Jun Linyuan is going to remember who I am. He has to. And what do you think of me? Am I beautiful? Yu Minji smiled at the head of the elders. His mesmerizing amorous eyes could melt the toughest stone heart. There was something wickedly enchanting about him that tickled one's heart. The head of the elders sighed in resignation. Yes, you are. That filled Yu Minji with confidence right away. Brushing his long black hair off his shoulder, he said, So all I need to do is to take that girl and make her fall in love with me. That way, Jun Linyuan will have to remember my name. The head of the elders sighed inwardly. In front of anyone else, their young master was this frightening figure. But when Jun Linyuan was involved, Yu Minji simply turned into a kid seeking attention. At the same time, Feng lost sight of Yu Minji in the blink of an eye. She frowned a little. Had she seen something that wasn't there? No, it couldn't be. She instinctively remembered that pair of bright, amorous eyes. That was a pair of eyes that could suck the soul out of someone, which had a beauty she couldn't have just created out of her imagination. It definitely hadn't been an illusion. However, since the person was gone, Feng didn't give it another thought. She turned in the direction of the ruckus. There came a mighty bang. The python crashed onto the ground from the air, making an enormous boom. Jun Linyuan moved as fast as lightning and his sword slashed down, leaving a pale red arc in the air. The next second, the python split open along its spine. It was cut in half. Blood sprayed out like a red mist. Chapter 41 Off we go. Chapter 41 Off we go. What strength! How frighteningly powerful he was. Watching Jun Linyuan descend slowly to the ground, Yu Minji suddenly realized that since the last time he saw Jun Linyuan, the guy had improved significantly again. I like that in an opponent. Clenching his fists, Yu Minji gestured at the others and they soon disappeared into the night. As soon as Jun Linyuan landed, Feng Sun and Xianyi went up to him in a hurry and stood one on each side. They looked pleasantly surprised. Boss Jun. Yes. Jun Linyuan's poker face never seemed to change. Is that python dead? You killed it just like that? Boss Jun, you've gotten so much more powerful again. Feng Sun couldn't suppress the excitement in his voice. Jun Linyuan only said, It was injured already. I know that. Feng Sun was still just as excited. But it was injured because you set Yu Minji up, wasn't it? So, at the end of the day you still take the credit. Ah. Immortal spiritual fruit. It's finally ours. The tiniest smile emerged on Jun Linyuan's handsome face. This was the first time Feng saw his lips curl up since meeting him again. Feng heart sank. By the look of it, this immortal spiritual fruit was very important to Jun Linyuan as well, otherwise he wouldn't have come all the way here from the imperial capital or smiled over the fruit. But Feng clenched her fists. That fruit was hers. It had to be. What would it take to steal that immortal spiritual fruit from Jun Linyuan? Feng racked her brain but nothing came to her. Jun Linyuan was simply too smart, not to mention that he was highly vigilant, meticulous and frighteningly powerful. Feng realized sadly that she would have been better off if the fruit was still guarded by the python, for she would at least have had a chance. Now she had zero idea where she could find an opening. What now? What to do? Feng almost scratched her scalp raw, but her head remained blank. Soon they reached the campsite they had stayed at the previous night. Feng Sun said, Traveling in the mountains after dark is too dangerous and we're all tired. Let's spend the night here and we'll move out tomorrow morning. They all went to bed after that. Feng rolled around in bed holding her blanket. The immortal spiritual fruit was in sight, but there was nothing she could do to get her hands on it. She felt utterly frustrated. Was she going to have to use herself as a honey trap now? Feng Wu smiled wryly, for she knew that Jun Linyuan would never fall for it. What about? While Feng Wu was still tossing and turning, a figure approached her quickly and covered her mouth. Feng Wu's eyes opened wide when she saw a face covered by a mask. The man in black jabbed a finger into the acupoint that controlled her voice, then wrapped her in the blanket, threw her over his shoulder and dashed off. You! Feng Wu wanted to cry out, but to her disappointment, she couldn't make a sound. She tried to struggle, but found resignedly that she couldn't move a muscle, for the man in black had attacked some other acupoints of hers, rendering her immobile. Right now, Feng Sun and the others were cultivating, which was why no one realized that she was missing. It seemed forever when with a thump, Feng Wu was tossed onto the ground, still wrapped in the blanket. She rolled with the momentum and eventually got out from under it. Before she could get up, she looked into a pair of amorous eyes. Ozai. Feng Wu's heart skipped a beat. She remembered. Chapter 42. Dude, are you an idiot? Chapter 42. Dude, are you an idiot? When she had fallen face down in the mud earlier on, didn't she hear someone snickering at her? That was the face and the pair of eyes she spotted. Yuminji crouched down in front of Feng Wu. Resting his chin on his right hand, he examined her up and down with an undisguised look of contempt in his eyes. Feng Wu hummed loudly. Oh right, only then did Yuminji realize that Feng Wu was immobilized. He then poked Feng Wu twice in the chest with a long finger. Phew, Feng Wu could move freely right away. She threw a fit at the teenager with the amorous eyes. Who are you? Why did you bring me here? What do you want from me? Yuminji had steeled himself to accept this ugly girl as his woman. Still crouching and resting his chin on his hands, he stared at Feng Wu with his clear amorous eyes, which was a rather adorable picture. Feng Wu was suddenly at a loss over what to say. I'll give you a chance to guess who I am. Yuminji winked at Feng Wu in a flirtatious way. Feng Wu's mind raced. All of a sudden, her eyes lit up and she gave him a mysterious smile. Will you let me go if I guess right? Do you think that's possible? Yuminji poked Feng Wu's cheek. Take a guess now or I'll have to kill you. Feng Wu threw him a dirty look, ignoring his threat. Yuminji chuckled at the slight. He had just been ignored by an ordinary girl. That was a first. Aren't you afraid of death? Yuminji was intrigued by the girl. All else aside, the fact that she was able to maintain her composure after being kidnapped was reason enough for him to think of her in a different light. Her ordinary face looked slightly more pleasant now. Feng Wu said in resignation, You're not going to kill me. What makes you so sure about that? Yuminji asked curiously. Feng Wu rolled her eyes. You snatched me in the middle of the night just to bring me out here to kill me? Why bother? That made Yuminji think even more highly of Feng Wu. Despite her ordinary appearance, one couldn't help but admire her courage. If it wasn't for her plain-looking face, he might actually like her. Her temperament was quite his cup of tea. I see you're a very smart girl. No wonder Jun Linyuan treats you differently. Yuminji darted a glance at Feng Wu, half smiling. But the other girl was telling the truth back there. Jun Linyuan will never marry you. Feng Wu was speechless. It's true. Trust me. Everyone says that the royal family canceled Jun Linyuan's betrothal to the Feng family. But that's not the case. Feng Wu is still your crown prince's future wife. Yuminji tried to cast a bone between Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu looked up at the sky and said in resignation, You really don't need to remind me of that again. She had been informed once when Feng Sun had been talking to Jun Linyuan. Why did this guy have to repeat it? Feng Wu was so frustrated that she looked distraught. Seeing the look on Feng Wu's face, Yuminji thought that she was heartbroken by the news, so he went on with his alienation attempt. What do you see in Jun Linyuan anyway? He still has this ambiguous relationship with that Feng the fifth girl, and that's what Qingluan has had her eye on him for a very long time. Look at how ordinary you are. Even if he's nice to you now, he still won't marry you. Feng Wu was speechless. Look at me. Look. Yuminji raised Feng Wu's chin with both hands and blinked at her as his amorous eyes shone. Look, aren't I handsome? Aren't I as good-looking as Jun Linyuan? Feng Wu smacked her forehead. Dude, are you an idiot or something? Chapter 43 Get me that immortal spiritual fruit. Chapter 43. Get me that immortal spiritual fruit. Resting his chin on his hands, the teenager winked at her with his mesmerizing amorous eyes and wouldn't stop nagging. Feng had no choice but to raise her eyelids and dart him a perfunctory glance. Aren't I a beautiful man? More so than Jun Linyuan, right? Minji batted his eyelashes. Past experience had taught him that with a single wink, every girl would be swept off their feet by his charm. The girl here looked just like the most gullible type. Feng didn't know what to say. Did guys nowadays no longer think beautiful, a pejorative term to describe their looks? What do you want? Feng asked grumpily. Jun Linyuan will never acknowledge you in public, but I will. Jun Linyuan won't marry you, but I can do that. Clenching his fists, the teenager said decisively, I'm the sacred son of the Dark Court. So, come to my side and you'll have more money than you can spend for the rest of your life. As Minji bragged about the promising future he would offer Feng Wu's mind was elsewhere. Staring at Minji with a blank look on her face, her mind had long wandered off to the other end of the universe. All she could think of was her immortal spiritual fruit. Immortal spiritual fruit. Immortal spiritual fruit. How was she supposed to take that immortal spiritual fruit from Jun Linyuan? Robbing it by sheer force was out of the question and she could only try to outwit him somehow. But Jun Linyuan was keeping such a close watch on the fruit. What ruse could she use? Feng had given herself a headache while trying to figure out a solution. Seeing the dull look in Feng eyes, Minji was elated. The girl was infatuated. Ha ha ha. He knew it. His good looks were unchallenged in this land, so it was only natural that the girl should fall head over heels for his charm. Ha ha ha. He had just won over Jun Linyuan's woman. Did that mean that he was more charismatic than Jun Linyuan? Ha ha ha. Minji couldn't help but laugh out loud. Startled by his guffaw, Feng came back to herself and stared at Minji in confusion with her big bright eyes. Before she could ask anything, Minji grabbed her wrist and said in excitement, Hey you, leave Jun Linyuan and come with me. I promise you that the Dark Court will treat you nicely. Leave Jun Linyuan? Feng was baffled. Since when had she agreed to betray Jun Linyuan? Before she could explain herself, Minji went on, his voice filled with excitement. So, I'm now giving you the task of that immortal spiritual fruit. Steal it from Jun Linyuan and bring it to me, and I'll officially recognize you as my woman. What? Feng completely ignored the second half of what Minji said, while the first half rumbled in her head like a sudden clap of thunder. Help Minji steal that immortal spiritual fruit from Jun Linyuan. It all happened in a split second. An idea occurred to Feng which seemed to inject her numb mind with a tonic. Instantly her mind turned again and she felt inspired. She was exhilarated. She turned her bright and clear eyes on Minji and stared at him unblinkingly. Minji's heart skipped a beat. Although, he soon convinced himself that the girl was so excited because he had promised to take her as his woman. There was no reason for him to be surprised. No ordinary girl could resist the offer of becoming Minji's concubine. Immortal spiritual fruit? Feng tried her best to keep her voice calm. She even had a look of disbelief in her eyes as she turned her gaze on Minji. So, are you asking for my help to get you that immortal spiritual fruit? Chapter 44 10,000 Ants. What? Chapter 44 10,000 Ants. What? Yes. But how can I possibly do that? It's Jun Linyuan we're talking about here. The Jun Linyuan. Feng said grumpily. Minji pursed his lips. Have you forgotten about me? What do you mean? He's Jun Linyuan, so what? True, he's brilliant and awesome, but am I weak and stupid then? Irritated, Minji rolled his eyes at Feng Feng really wanted to nod her head, but since she still cherished her life, she could only shake it in silence. Is that so? Feng said casually. Tell me about it. Immortal spiritual fruit. Her immortal spiritual fruit. With it, she would be able to resume her cultivation. And with that, she could wake up her beautiful master, who was the most powerful being on this continent. At that thought, Feng Wu could barely keep her excitement at bay, and her heart beat so fast that it felt like it was going to jump out of her mouth. Yuminji had no idea of the tumult of emotions inside Feng Wu's head. Darting a look at Feng Wu, he tossed an object at her. Catching it, Feng Wu saw that it was some liquid. "That's a switching needle," Yuminji informed Feng Wu in a complacent tone. "Your job is to suck out the juice of that immortal spiritual fruit and replace it with the liquid in this needle." Feng Wu pointed at the switching needle and the see-through pouch attached to it and asked, "This liquid isn't toxic, is it?" Yuminji gave her an "Are you an idiot" look. "Toxic liquid? What kind of person do you think I am? Of course it's super toxic liquid." Feng Wu was speechless. Staring at Feng Wu, Yuminji said, "Wait, don't tell me you going soft all of a sudden. You do realize that you're my woman now, right? It's too late to back out now." After that, Yuminji glared at Feng Wu in a strange, conflicted way. Conflicted? What was Yuminji conflicted about? Feng Wu was confused. Yuminji, on the other hand, scratched his head, rose to his feet, and began to walk around Feng Wu in circles. He looked up at the starry night, then turned to look at Feng Wu with contempt, but he just wouldn't say a word. Feng Wu was baffled. What was going on? What exactly was Yuminji thinking? Well, he was thinking whether or not to make the girl his right here and right now, since it was all dark and secluded. That way, the girl would be his for good, and she would willingly do as bid without ever questioning him. However, what bothered Yuminji was, as someone that valued good looks more than anything else, he simply couldn't bring himself to do anything to a girl who looked this ordinary. "What are you thinking about?" Feng Wu looked at him in confusion. "No, I can't do that to myself." The teenager clenched his fists as he reassured himself and concluded with a resolute Feng Wu watched speechlessly as the teenager struggled with himself. She asked again, still confused, "So, what exactly are you going to do?" Yuminji turned his hand over, revealing a pink pill on his right palm. Before Feng Wu could react, Yuminji stuffed that pill into her mouth. One lick with her tongue and Feng Wu recognized it. A laxative for treating constipation. Feng Wu had yet to digest this information when a voice sounded above her. "Do you know what that was?" Yuminji said in an intimidating voice. Feng Wu raised her head and saw the contrived stern look on the teenager's face. She smiled. However, before she could reply, Yuminji said in a cold, relentless, and condescending voice, "That's the excruciating, soul-destroying, bone-crushing, mind-poisoning pill of 10,000 ants." "Huh?" Feng Wu looked at Yuminji with a blank face. "That's 10,000 ants, what?" Chapter 45, The Silly Melodramatic Teenager. Chapter 45, The Silly Melodramatic Teenager. Yuminji stared at Feng Wu and repeated, "That's the excruciating, soul-destroying, bone-crushing, mind-poisoning pill of 10,000 ants." Feng Wu was utterly dumbfounded. This Yuminji was an imbecile. Come on, she was a medicine refiner. Although she had never been officially tested, she was sure that she was one of the best in the whole of the Junwu Empire. Did this guy just call a pink laxative pill an excruciating, soul-destroying, bone-crushing, mind-poisoning pill of 10,000 ants? Did he even know that she was the one who created the recipe for this laxative pill? Hence, Feng Wu was at a loss for words. Looking up at the sky, she found that no star out there could even begin to understand her feelings. Yuminji had no idea that he was looking at a master inventor of toxins. Crouching down, he straightened his face and threatened Feng Wu in the most serious tone he could manage. "I'm only going to ask you once. Are you scared now?" Feng Wu said, "Yes, my ass." Seeing the resigned look on Feng Wu's face, Yuminji thought that he had successfully fooled her. He was so pleased with himself. Ha 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 ha. Resting his hands on his waist, Yuminji laughed aloud at the sky. "That's right. You should be. So don't even think about betraying me, or you'll die a miserable death from the excruciating pain of being bitten by 10,000 ants." Feng Wu said, "Whatever." Yuminji snorted proudly. "Go back to the campsite, draw out the juice of the fruit, and fill it with this toxic liquid. Do that or Feng Wu gritted her teeth and feigned a troubled look. "But Jun Linyuan keeps the fruit by his side the whole time. How am I going to get close enough?" Yuminji glared at Feng Wu, as if he was looking at an idiot. He then jabbed her smooth forehead with a finger. Do you think I'll just sit by and watch? Feng stumbled back a little. But are you sure you can handle Jun Linyuan? He's pretty tough. Those provocative words worked wonders, something which Feng already knew. As expected, Yu Minji jumped as soon as he heard that. Pointing at Feng he said, Jun Linyuan is tough? Him. Humph. I'll show you that I'm the tougher one. Just wait and see. Feng asked innocently, her eyes clear and bright, are you sure? Of course. Yu Minji snorted. Excruciating soul-destroying bone-crushing mind-poisoning pill of 10,000 ants. Just keep that in mind. Feng said, fine. Come here. Yu Minji beckoned at Feng Wu. Feng Wu hesitated and looked very timid. I'm not going to hurt you. Seeing her reaction, Yu Minji waved at her impatiently. Get your ass over here. I'll talk you through my plan. Sure. Feng Wu's eyes lit up and she ran happily to his side. Seeing that Feng Wu had turned into a gambling puppy, Yu Minji pursed his lips and said sulkily, for a moment back there, I thought you were so loyal to Jun Linyuan. TSK, I see you've converted completely once becoming my woman. Jun Linyuan will definitely be furious when he finds out. Feng Wu made no comment. It was true. Silly teenagers were so melodramatic. Once you go back, Yu Minji whispered his plan into Feng Wu's ear. Feng Wu nodded as she listened. Yu Minji might seem goofy and childish, but when he put his mind to it, he was a pretty smart guy. He wasn't as popular as Jun Linyuan for nothing. Lie down on it. Holding a corner of the blanket, Yu Minji glared at Feng Wu impatiently. It'll be dawn soon. If Jun Linyuan finds out first, he won't hesitate to kill you with his sword. Chapter 46 Crisis. Chapter 46 Crisis. Feng Wu was rendered speechless, but she still rolled herself up inside the blanket again and let Yu Minji himself carry her back to the campsite over his shoulder. All was silent. The only sounds were the sporadic chirps of insects. Yu Minji arrived at the campsite with Feng Wu over his shoulder, only to find it brightly lit. Jun Linyuan, Feng Sun, and the rest of the team had gathered round, and by the looks on their faces, Feng Sun was arguing with the rest of them. Feng Wu and Yu Minji looked at each other awkwardly. They've realized I'm gone, Feng Wu said in a serious tone, looking straight into Yu Minji's eyes. That would render Yu Minji's plan useless, for Feng Wu would easily draw suspicion to herself after being missing for so long. She would never get close enough to Jun Linyuan. Yu Minji opened his eyes wide and glared at Feng Wu. After all the effort he had spent on this girl, she was exposed because he had snatched her away. Would all that effort go to waste? Yu Minji glowered at Feng Wu. How could you be exposed? Feng Wu rolled her eyes. You're blaming me now. Yu Minji snapped, yes, I'm blaming you. It's all your fault. What good can you do now? Feng Wu was speechless. Aren't you overreacting over something so trivial? Trivial? Yu Minji was so pissed that he broke into laughter. You call that trivial? Jun Linyuan had discovered that she was missing and was suspicious of her. She could no longer get close to the fruit. Yu Mingyue thought that all his effort so far was for naught. Attack on my signal. Act as planned when I raise my right hand. Contrary to Yu Minji's frenzied rage, Feng Wu remained composed. Her eyes betrayed no emotion and seemed to glow blue in the dark. Yu Minji's heart lurched when he saw her eyes. What a pair of eyes. She was way too unperturbed and level-headed to be a coward. Plus, how could her eyes be so beautiful? They reminded him of the most brilliant stars in the sky, which he found so attractive. Bah! Yu Minji smacked his own forehead. How could he have such feelings for such an ordinary girl? It had to be an illusion. It had to be. The girl he was going to fall in love with had to at least be as good-looking as himself. Yu Minji clenched his fists in determination. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was rubbing herself against plants moist with dew. Only after her hair and clothes were slightly wet did she walk away quickly, still wrapped in her blanket. Somewhere ahead, Feng Sun was bickering with Xianyi. Xianyi smirked. Are you still going to vouch for that girl you picked up from the side of the road? Would she go missing if she wasn't up to something? Feng Sun snapped, fine, if you're convinced that she's up to no good, tell me what it is. She has to have a motive, right? That immortal spiritual fruit, of course. Fairy Muyao was shaking with excitement now that she could finally charge Feng Wu with something. Obviously she's here for the fruit. But Boss Jun has that fruit with him now, not her. Why would she run away? Feng Sun smirked. That rendered Fairy Muyao speechless. She's probably. Shouldn't you be in bed? Why are you shouting at each other? A calm voice rang out behind them. Everyone turned around instantly. Xiaowu. Feng Sun rushed to Feng Wu's side first. He took her hand and asked in an excited voice, "Where did you go in the middle of the night? We've been looking everywhere for you. I thought something happened to you." Seeing Feng Wu return, Fairy Muyao burned with rage. She must have gone to tip someone off. Chapter 47. Is he going to kill her? Chapter 47. Is he going to kill her? You had to hand it to Fairy Muyao. She was right on point every time. Too bad no one would listen to her. Feng Sun glared at Fairy Muyao. Shut up. Fairy Muyao snorted and turned her angry gaze on Feng Wu. Speak. Where were you? Why couldn't we find you anywhere? Did you go off to send secret messages to someone? Feng Wu looked at Fairy Muyao with a bemused expression and blinked her limpid eyes. I left the campsite for a while. That's all. Don't even try to tell us that you went to relieve yourself. We looked everywhere and you weren't there. How far could you have gone to do that anyway? Fairy Muyao asked sharply. Feng Wu still looked as innocent as ever. I went to take a shower under a waterfall about 5 kilometers from here. Fairy Muyao wouldn't believe a word she said. Then why didn't you respond when we called your name? It was drowned out by all the splashing at the waterfall, I suppose, Feng Wu said casually. Did you really go all the way to the waterfall to search for me? Fairy Muyao fell silent. Feng Wu could easily handle Fairy Muyao's accusation, and Xian Yi's gaze didn't bother her at all. However, when that piercing, intense gaze turned toward her, Feng Wu's stomach lurched and her heart began to race. She barely knew where to put her hands, let alone think straight. Jun Linyuan's gaze was so sharp. It was as if he could look into her mind. Feng Wu exhaled, turned around and met Jun Linyuan's gaze with her limpid eyes. Their eyes met, and a sizzling arc of lightning seemed to spark and ignite the air between them. Keeping his intense gaze on Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan rose to his feet and walked toward Feng Wu with steady steps, keeping a hand behind his back. He stopped right in front of Feng Wu and looked down at her. Thanks to her beautiful master's teaching, Feng Wu had seen much more of the world than most people her age, but she got sweaty palms at the pressure Jun Linyuan gave her with his gaze. What an intimidating sensation. It was as if he was going to grab her neck at any moment and snap it with a crack. A chill ran down Feng Wu's spine. Your Royal Highness. Feng Wu forced herself to stay calm. She raised her head and looked right into his eyes. Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on Feng Wu without uttering a word, his sharp eyes reminding her of an eagle. All of a sudden, he reached out toward Feng Wu with his right hand, which was as fair as a piece of white jade. Feng Wu could taste death in her mouth and she got goosebumps all over. Fine sweat covered her forehead. She couldn't back away now. If she did, she would be deemed guilty. Hence, not only couldn't she stumble back, she had to maintain eye contact with Jun Linyuan the whole time. It was really difficult. Feng Sun tried to intervene but was stopped by Xian Yi. Just when Feng Wu thought Jun Linyuan was going to strangle her, Jun Linyuan drew his hand back with a magnolia petal between his fingers. He had removed it from Feng Wu's hair. Still staring at Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu slowly heaved a sigh of relief. For a moment there, the hairs on the back of her neck had stood up and she really thought Jun Linyuan was going to throttle her. Feng Wu then spotted that pear-sized immortal spiritual fruit dangling on Jun Linyuan's waistband. That was her immortal spiritual fruit, the one she had had her eye on for 5 years. Chapter 48 Gotcha. Chapter 48 Gotcha. With that, she would have a chance to resume her cultivation. But how on earth was she supposed to get her hands on that immortal spiritual fruit? How? All of a sudden, an idea struck Feng Wu and her eyes flickered. Yes. It occurred to Feng Wu in a split second and she found her opening. Feng Wu knew perfectly well that this was her only chance to get this close to Jun Linyuan, and she couldn't afford to miss it. At that thought, Feng Wu staggered, bumping into Jun Linyuan. Meanwhile, she cried out, "Ah!" It all happened so suddenly that Jun Linyuan stumbled back at the impact until he fell down on the ground. Moreover, Feng Wu herself fell on top of him. And it didn't stop there. She fell, and her mouth landed on his. Their eyes met. Everyone around them was astonished. Feng Sun's mouth fell open. Xianyi opened his eyes wide. Fairy Muyao froze on the spot. Even Jun Linyuan's poker face looked shocked. His face went blank for a brief second. Without warning, he went scarlet in the face and even the skin behind his ears turned pink. Feng Sun was the first to react. Seeing Jun Linyuan's red face, Feng Sun thought that it was from the guy's fury, which scared the wits out of him. He cried out, rushed to Feng Wu's side, and grabbed her by the back of her collar. Then with a yank he pulled Feng Wu behind him. Only then did the rest of them realize what had happened. Feng Sun stammered, "Boss Jun, well, Xiaowu didn't mean it. She didn't try to take advantage of you. No, I mean she just got scared and that's why." "Shit. What am I talking about?" Seeing what had happened, Fairy Muyao turned scarlet with rage. Her eyes seemed to spit fire as she glared at Feng Wu. The more Fairy Muyao thought about it, the more painful a memory it became. She finally burst into tears. She hadn't even touched the crown prince once and Feng Wu had already kissed him. Jun Linyuan turned his piercing gaze on Feng Wu immediately. Shielding Feng Wu with an arm, Feng Sun cried out, "Boss Jun, I know you're kind of a neat freak, but Xiaowu really didn't mean to. She was just, please forgive her, Boss Jun." Jun Linyuan pursed his thin, red lips as he looked grimly at Feng Wu. His expression was indecipherable. Feng Wu raised her right hand at that moment. Boom! A loud bang ripped through the air. "We're under attack!" Feng Sun cried out. Everyone turned in the direction of that loud noise. Flames surged into the sky and a frantic energy charged at them. "It's Yuminji and his men," Feng Sun warned the others. Yuminji was approaching rapidly with his 3 elders. Charging straight for Jun Linyuan, Yuminji shouted, "Jun Linyuan, you'll remember my name after tonight." He had already engaged Jun Linyuan in combat before he finished that sentence. Seeing that a major fight had broken out, Feng Wu tried to get herself away from the battlefield. However, Feng Sun wouldn't let go of her hand. "Stay right behind me. Keep your distance from those people." Feng Wu was crying inwardly. Just then when she deliberately fell on Jun Linyuan, she had drawn out the juice of that immortal spiritual fruit when Jun Linyuan wasn't watching and replaced it with the liquid. Now. Chapter 49. Did you just call me young master you? Chapter 49. Did you just call me young master you? The juice of the fruit was in Feng Wu's possession, and all she had to do was get the hell out of here. However, Feng Sun was gripping her wrist hard to try and keep her safe, so tight that blue veins popped up on the back of his hand. Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun with her limpid, bright eyes, the look in them indecipherable. Feng Sun still had no idea that she had removed the juice from the fruit. Yuminji was steadily losing ground against Jun Linyuan. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted Feng Wu, whose wrist was in Feng Sun's grip. Yuminji's face turned livid immediately. The ugly girl was his woman. How dare Feng Sun hold her hand? How dare he? Yuminji called out a command to the head of the elders, who had rushed to his aid. "Go over there." Seeing that his young master was losing out to Jun Linyuan, the head of the elders shook his head in resignation, but still turned around and charged at Feng Sun. It became quite the challenge for Feng Sun to protect Feng Wu once the head of the elders began his assault. "Run!" Feng Sun cried at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gave Feng Sun one last look, not quite knowing how to describe her feelings at that moment. Of all the people in the team, Feng Sun was the one she felt the most guilty about lying to. "I promise I'll make it up to you after I get my strength back, brother Feng Sun." Feng Wu clenched her fists. The next second, she dashed away as fast as she could. No one noticed her disappearance, or even if they did, they probably couldn't care less. Feng Wu kept on running. All she could think of was getting to the foot of the mountain. Now, once the juice left the fruit, Its spiritual essence would start to dissipate rapidly. She was afraid that she would lose all of it before even leaving the mountain. An idea then struck Feng, and she quickly transferred the juice into a bottle, then filled the pouch of the switching needle with another viscous liquid, which was star aloe vera juice. From appearance alone, star aloe vera juice was no different from Immortal spiritual fruit juice, as both were thick, transparent, and limpid. Only after that did Feng let out a breath of relief. Looking at the thumb-sized white porcelain bottle in her hand, Feng smiled wholeheartedly for the first time since she got here. Her entire face seemed to light up as she beamed. Finally, she had gotten hold of her Immortal spiritual fruit. After taking it back home and refining that 9 transformation spirit restoration pill, she would be able to resume her cultivation. The good-for-nothing 5th daughter of the Feng family was going to reverse her situation for good. Just then, a cold voice interrupted her reverie. "Ugly girl, I see that you're a fast runner," a grumpy voice said behind Feng. Feng's heart sank. Yuminji. She was never going to outrun Yuminji, and it was that realization which stopped Feng from trying anything else. Turning around, she greeted Yuminji with an obsequious smile. "Young master Yu." "Young master Yu?" Yuminji's wickedly mesmerizing, amorous eyes narrowed and he smirked maliciously. "Did you just call me young master Yu?" Young master." Feng was lifted off the ground and she struggled violently. "Humph." Yuminji's eyes spat flames of rage as he stared at her. She could almost feel his wrath burning her skin. The longer Yuminji stared at Feng's tender, pink lips, the angrier he got. All of a sudden, he raised a hand and flipped his sleeve at Feng. Was he going to hit her now? Feng's stomach lurched. However, before she knew it, Yuminji was wiping her lips with his flamboyant pink sleeve. He rubbed so hard that it was obvious he was upset. Feng glowered. What are you doing?" Chapter 50 Feng Xiao. Stop right there. Chapter 50 Feng Xiao. Stop right there. Yuminji puffed out his cheeks. "You heartless, fickle woman. Do you even know what shame is? How dare you kiss Jun Linyuan? Have you forgotten that you're my woman now?" Feng finally knew what all the fuss was about. But why was he so angry? "My hands were tied, okay? I only did it to get the juice of the fruit," Feng retorted confidently. Plus, since when was she Yuminji's woman? He was making things up. Yuminji smirked. "There were 100 ways to do that. Was that your only choice?" Feng stared back at him. "But that was the most straightforward and effective one. Look, I got the juice, didn't I?" Yuminji's face was livid as he pointed at Feng's forehead. "Just admit it. You wanted to kiss Jun Linyuan and you still like him. You just can't get over him. Is that it?" Feng looked the exasperated Yuminji up and down, then said out of the blue, "Yuminji, you're not actually falling in love with me, are you?" Yuminji's cheeks flushed at those words and he panted with rage. "Oh, me? Like a woman with loose morals like you? Don't flatter yourself." "Great. Glad to hear that." Patting her chest, Feng was relieved. Yuminji, on the other hand, was so furious that blue veins popped on his forehead and his chest heaved. However, Feng said lightheartedly, "Since you don't like me and I feel the same about you, we'll go our separate ways from here, and hopefully we won't see each other again." After that, Feng dashed out at top speed. Yuminji didn't see that coming. His face nearly turned green as he bellowed, "How dare you? Get back here." He was going to chase her when he realized in utter frustration that his shoes were stuck to the ground by some super glue. What was worse, the glue had seeped through the soles of his boots. He was going to take his shoes off and go after her, but his feet were also glued fast to his boots. He had been set up by that ugly girl. When had she set the super glue under his feet? How come he never noticed? Yuminji had never felt so humiliated. He bellowed after Feng, "Stop right there, you ugly girl. Have you forgotten that excruciating soul-destroying bone-crushing mind-poisoning pill of 10,000 ants? You'll die a miserable death." Feng, who was already 100 meters away, found his threat ridiculous. She turned around and made a face at Yuminji. "Young master Yu, that's a really big name for some pink laxative pill." "Pink laxative pill?" She knew. She had known from the very start what it was. So she had been faking it all along. Thinking back to all his elaborate threats against her, Yuminji found himself such a clown. Damn it. Infuriated, Yuminji pounded his fist on a tree trunk. Feng Xiaowu, stop right there. You'll wish you were dead when I catch you. How dare she trick him? The girl had messed with the wrong guy. At those words, Feng Wu ran even faster. There was no way she was going to stay here. Face livid, Yuminji was driven over his limit by his rage. He broke free of the super glue, but the sudden exertion of power also injured his internal organs. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Feng Xiaowu, stop right there. Yuminji ignored his internal injury completely. All he could think of was catching Feng Xiaowu, this ugly girl. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder. Shit. Chapter 51 Upsy-Daisy. Chapter 51 Upsy-Daisy. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder. What she saw was a furious Yuminji charging at her at lightning speed. Feng Wu's pupils contracted. Feng Xiaowu, stop right there. One more step and you're dead. Even from this distance, Feng Wu could still vividly sense Yuminji's fury. Hadn't she glued his feet to the ground already? Shifting her gaze downward, Feng Wu saw Yuminji's bare, bloody feet. She was astonished. Shit. How much did Yuminji hate her? He would rather sustain an internal injury than cut her loose. Stop. She wasn't ready to die yet, thank you. Feng Wu cried out and quickened her pace. This wasn't good. Stop there. Stop. Despite his internal injury, Yuminji was still a talented cultivator. Without any spiritual essence, Feng Wu was never going to be his match. Feng Wu could hear the sound of the surging tide in the big river a short distance away. She ran as fast as she could. She ground her teeth. Quickly. She was dead if he caught her. 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 100 meters, 50 meters, 10 meters. The river, aka her escape route, was getting closer. But so were Yuminji's footsteps and snarls behind her. Feng Wu was ecstatic. As soon as she jumped into the rolling waves of that river, she would be safe. However, when Feng Wu was 3 meters away from that big river and leapt up, ready to dive in, snap! Yuminji grabbed Feng Wu's leg in midair right away. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. Another half a second, no, a tenth of a second, and she would have been in the river. Yuminji would never catch her in the water, for she was a brilliant swimmer. But Feng Wu had been that close to freedom when Yuminji stopped her and held her up off the ground. She struggled, flailing all 4 limbs. Yuminji rolled his eyes when he saw Feng Wu's swimming movements. Did she think she was in the water? Was she doing arm strokes? Yuminji was elated to see Feng Wu's predicament. Holding Feng Wu over his head, he smirked. Why aren't you running now? I'd like to see you try. Feng Wu felt like screaming. However, she didn't think herself completely hopeless, for it was Yuminji who had caught her, not Jun Linyuan and his people. Feng Wu's heart nearly stopped when she thought of Jun Linyuan's eternal poker face. And when she imagined how betrayed Feng Sun would feel when he found out the truth, Feng Wu couldn't bring herself to continue thinking about it. Hence, facing just Yuminji, Feng Wu was capable of being unbelievably shameless. Yuminji, what are you doing? Put me down and let's talk. Yuminji had caught Feng Wu by her left leg. However, being as wicked as he was, he tossed Feng Wu up, and when she fell back down, he caught her on an open palm as she lay there on her stomach. Yuminji snorted inwardly at Feng Wu's words. How dare this ugly girl sound so righteous after what she did to him? Where did she get the courage? What am I doing? Ha ha ha, do you think I'll let you off the hook that easily? You're my toy now. I can play with you however I like. Yuminji raised Feng Wu over his head as he spoke, then. Chapter 52 Dear Brother Yu. Chapter 52, Dear Brother Yu. Yuminji actually. After lifting Feng Wu up, he began to spin her around on his right palm. It was as if he wasn't holding a human being, but a handkerchief like what they used in fold dances. He spun and spun her. And went faster. And faster still. Feng Wu's stomach churned. She was so nauseated that she was really going to throw up. Damn you, Yuminji. Yuminji, you moron. Fengwu retched. We can talk about this. Just put me down. Yuminji was all the more pleased when he heard Fengwu's exasperated voice. Humph. She had tricked him and now she was threatening him? Forget it. Hence he spun her even faster. Fengwu wanted to cry. She realized then that Yuminji was a guy that would yield to a soft approach but would reject force. Dear brother you're the best. I'm sure you'll never bully a girl, right? I really want to throw up, brother you. Fengwu nearly made herself sick by addressing him that way. Yuminji hated to admit it, but he indeed softened at that gentle, pleading voice. Apart from her pretty eyes, this ugly girl had such a nice voice too. Her saccharine voice could melt a guy inside out, making them do anything for her willingly. Bah! How could he have such thoughts about this ugly girl? He must have lost his mind. Yuminji stopped that train of thought immediately. He cleared his throat and stopped spinning her. Do you know what you've done wrong now? Fengwu nodded her head repeatedly, looking as docile as a lamb. Brother you. I'm sorry. I really am. Yuminji was over the moon to see her so obedient, but he wouldn't show it and still kept a straight face. You know that now. Fengwu was in fact very anxious at that moment. Since Yuminji had caught up with her, Jun Linyuan, Fengsun, and the others would also be here soon. With Yuminji she could eat humble pie or hold her head as high as she wanted, but with Jun Linyuan and Fengsun, she was too embarrassed to even think about it. Hence, Fengwu spared no effort in cozying up to Yuminji, so that she could be on her way as soon as possible. Hence, she asked in her most naive voice, Brother you, can you maybe put me down first? Yuminji was guffawing in his head. Ha ha ha, no longer the arrogant girl a moment ago, are you? Beg me to let go of you. No, I can't. Yuminji rejected her outright. Fengwu clenched her fists in frustration, but she took a deep breath and fought back her vexation. Brother you want the juice of that immortal spiritual fruit, don't you? Fengwu took out a white porcelain bottle from her chest pocket and shook it in one hand. There. This is it. Brother you please take it. Yuminji snorted inwardly. What a cowardly girl. He had expected her to be much more stubborn than this. As it turned out, she had offered it to him before he even asked. Yuminji then reached out for the bottle. All of a sudden. Chapter 53 You killed Xiaowu. Chapter 53 You killed Xiaowu. All of a sudden, the cork of the bottle burst out with a pop. At the same time, a puff of white powder scattered in Yuminji's face. Cough cough. Unable to dodge in time, Yuminji's face was covered in that powder. He hadn't let his guard down, but Fengwu had such an advantageous position and he simply had no chance. Before Yuminji could react, Fengwu kicked him in the face. Poor young master you. Fengwu nearly broke his pretty nose on that gorgeous face of his. Yuminji was instantly dazed. For as long as he could remember, he was the one who gave others a hard time, not the other way round. Even when he got injured in a fight, no one had ever been able to touch his face. Everyone knew how much Yuminji cared about his beautiful face. But now, someone had just kicked him in his fair face hard. Young master. The head of the elders was approaching them fast. Fengwu's stomach lurched. That was the most prominent of Yuminji's elders. Moreover, she could make out quite a few other footsteps behind the man. Jun Linyuan and Fengsun had to be coming this way as well. Fengwu was vexed. While Yuminji had yet to recover from the initial shock, Fengwu shifted her body and slithered off Yuminji's palm like a sleek fish, dashing toward the wide river. Splash! Only then did Yuminji realize what had happened. Cough cough. He wiped his face as he coughed. However, the powder Fengwu used was so potent that both of his eyes were swollen red. Yuminji couldn't see clearly, but he heard the sound of her jumping in. Without another thought, Yuminji jumped in after her. Seeing that, the head of the elders was so anxious that he grabbed Yuminji right away. However, Yuminji threw the elder's hand off. Back off. I'm getting that ugly girl back. Yuminji burst into a fury. That ugly girl looked so timid just a moment ago and had called him dear brother you. But look what she did. What a wicked woman. He had never been tricked like this before. The moment Yuminji hit the water, He knew something was wrong. This unknown toxic powder the ugly girl threw over his face burnt like hell when it made contact with water. His swollen eyes worsened and he couldn't open them at all. Together with his bleeding feet and that internal injury, Yuminji screamed in anger. Ignoring the pain, he charged at Feng Wu like a shooting arrow. Feng Wu was startled when she saw Yuminji coming at her. She raised her hand and threw a white porcelain bottle at Yuminji's head. That's the immortal spiritual fruit juice you wanted. Take it. The bottle was aimed at Yuminji's forehead. After what happened to him a moment ago, Yuminji dodged involuntarily. Feng Wu took that opportunity to dive into the river. She was nowhere to be seen after that. Just then Jun Linyuan and the others arrived in a hurry. Yuminji. Seeing Feng Wu sink into the river and Yuminji going after her, Feng Sun was so furious that his eyes turned red. He bellowed, Yuminji. You killed Xiaowu. I'm going to kill you. Chapter 54. Could he tell the truth? Chapter 54. Could he tell the truth? Yuminji was going to scoop Feng Wu up after she dove in. But Feng Sun was on a rampage. He ran into the river and charged at Yuminji, splashing water all over the latter's face as he did so. Yuminji's vision was already blurred from the swelling, and the water only made his eyes worse. He had a chance to grab Feng Wu, but lost it completely at Feng Sun's interruption. Yuminji was furious. But that wasn't the worst of all. Feng Sun grabbed him by the neck and said through his gritted teeth, Yuminji, you bastard. What did Xiaowu ever do to you? You killed her. I'm going to kill you. Without another word, Feng Sun raised his fist and punched Yuminji in the nose. Thump. Poor Yuminji. How much had he suffered because of Feng Wu? His feet were bleeding, his eyes hurt, and he had sustained an internal injury, so much so that he couldn't dodge the incoming fist, and it landed right on the bridge of his prominent nose. As for the head of the elders, he wanted to help his young master, but was stopped by Jun Linyuan. Yuminji cursed loudly in his head. He could live with the fact that he had been tricked by that ugly girl, but that bastard Feng Sun had accused him of killing her? The girl escaped of her own free will, okay? But could Yuminji reveal the truth? No, because he would rather die than have another soul know how hopelessly he had been fooled. His male pride was at risk. Hence, Yuminji returned Feng Sun's blow. How dare you hit me? You killed Xiaowu. Die. Thump. 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 Feng Sun wasn't Yuminji's match, but the latter was greatly weakened after Feng Wu's successive traps, and the two guys ended up fighting to a draw. In the end, Jun Linyuan's angry rebuke stopped them. Enough! Everyone stopped what they were doing instantly and backed away to their own teams. It was now Jun Linyuan's team versus Yuminji's. Once Feng Sun got Yuminji off his back, he ran into the river immediately, but Feng Wu was long gone, leaving no trace behind at all. Tears welled up in Feng Sun's eyes. Yuminji's eyes were much better now, and he snorted at the look on Feng Sun's face. At that moment, Jun Linyuan knitted his nice thick eyebrows, the look in his eyes brooding. Yuminji gave him a half-smile. Your Royal Highness, did you only now realize there's something wrong with your immortal spiritual fruit? TSK. You're slipping. Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes. Since the fruit was kept in a white jade box, Jun Linyuan indeed hadn't found anything wrong with it until just then, when Feng Wu disappeared in the river. Something struck him as odd and he examined the fruit. He then found out what wasn't right. Seeing Jun Linyuan's livid face, Feng Sun asked, Boss Jun, what's wrong? Wasn't the fruit with you the whole time? What could possibly happen? That's a very good question, ha ha ha. After all the grievances he had suffered at Feng Wu's hands, Yuminji was greatly satisfied at Feng Sun's words. Resting his hands on his waist, he darted a gloating look at Jun Linyuan. Aren't you supposed to be the omnipotent crown prince? How could anything happen to that fruit when it's under your guard? Ha ha ha. Jun Linyuan's face turned grimmer. Boss Jun. Feng Sun was surprised. Chapter 55. It was supposed to be. Chapter 55. It was supposed to be. The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes was so gloomy and penetrating that everyone shuddered. Yuminji was still guffawing. How about that? I'm telling the truth, aren't I? Something happened to that immortal spiritual fruit, right? Ha ha ha. Feng Sun was going to argue with Yuminji when Jun Linyuan regained his poise. Staring at the fruit, which resembled white jade in his hand, he frowned a little and said, "This immortal spiritual fruit isn't what it should be." What? Feng Sun was so shocked that he nearly jumped up. How can that be? The fruit? Did we get a fake one when we picked it up on the cliff? Everyone turned their gazes to Jun Linyuan. However, Jun Linyuan shook his head, the look in his eyes cold. No. Feng Sun said anxiously. But the fruit has been with you ever since we picked it up from the top of the cliff. Could someone have switched it out on your watch? That's impossible. The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes reminded one of a cold sharp blade sliding out of its sheath. He said calmly it wasn't switched. It wasn't? What happened then? Feng Sun was confused. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Sun a mysterious smile, then tossed the fruit at the latter. Feng Sun caught it with both hands. After examining it closely, he couldn't find anything out of place. This was indeed the fruit they had obtained from the top of that cliff, wasn't it? Feng Sun then squeezed the fruit and whoosh. Water spritzed out of that fruit. Caught off guard, Feng Sun had water all over his face. Ha ha ha. Seeing what happened to Feng Sun, Yuminji guffawed with his hands on his waist. He then pointed at Feng Sun, laughing so hard that he almost ran out of breath. Ha ha ha, you're dead. There's no hope for you. You've been poisoned, ha ha ha. Poisoned. Feng Sun tossed the fruit on the ground and jumped away immediately. But after feeling around his face, he found nothing out of the ordinary. He frowned at the water on his palms. That's just water, not poison. Yuminji, you liar. After that, Feng Sun tried to start a fight with Yuminji again. Yuminji broke into wild laughter. Water? Ha ha, Feng Sun, you idiot. What? Ha ha ha. That's wailing and screaming hypertoxic cadaver poison. Your skin will be eaten away, and you'll die a miserable death, ha ha ha. However, he was the only one making any sound. Everyone else kept their silence as they gave Yuminji strange looks. Yuminji's laughter sounded all the more embarrassing in the silence. He stopped short when he saw Feng Sun's clear, smooth skin. That wasn't right. Shouldn't the fruit be filled with wailing and screaming hypertoxic cadaver poison? Why aren't you dead? Yuminji's face turned livid as he stared at Feng Sun in disbelief. Feng Sun rolled his eyes. Wailing and screaming hypertoxic cadaver poison? Are you nuts? No, it was supposed to be. Yuminji tried to explain himself, but Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes and his eagle-like sharp gaze was now on Yuminji. Something clicked in Yuminji's head. He suddenly realized that he had revealed something he shouldn't have. Covering his mouth involuntarily, his eyes opened wide. Chapter 56. What happened to your eyes? Chapter 56. What happened to your eyes? Was it supposed to be wailing and screaming hypertoxic cadaver poison? Jun Linyuan repeated what Yuminji said a minute ago. Yuminji looked suspiciously guilty. Jun Linyuan stepped forward, keeping his sharp, unblinking gaze on Yuminji the whole time. Yuminji took a step back. It then occurred to him suddenly. How could he step back? He was supposed to be Jun Linyuan's #1 rival. He had to hold his ground. At that thought, Yuminji stuck out his chest and tried his best to return Jun Linyuan's gaze with equal intensity. The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes was gloomy, dangerous, and brooding. It gave Yuminji the creeps. A chill ran down his spine, but he struggled to keep his voice steady. Yes, you heard me. It was supposed to contain wailing and screaming hypertoxic cadaver poison. There should be venom in that fruit. Yuminji gloated. On my instruction, the ugly girl inserted the wailing and screaming hypertoxic cadaver poison into the fruit. Haha, Jun Linyuan. I bet you didn't see that coming. But that ugly girl switched to my side. She's my woman now. She stole the juice of the fruit and poisoned it like I told her to. She was so obedient. Resting his hands on his waist, Yuminji laughed. Do you want to know how I did it? Haha, it was really easy. I told her that I would make her my concubine if she did this for me. That ugly girl jumped at the offer and rushed back to finish her task. She would do anything for me, ha ha ha. The head of the elders watched as Yuminji guffawed and couldn't help but look the other way. Young master, have you already forgotten about your injured eyes? Yuminji was still showing off his master plan. She was free lunch, so I thought, why not? I accepted her service, then instructed her to steal the juice of the fruit and replace it with wailing and screaming hypertoxic cadaver poison. Ha ha ha. Feng Sun, your life depends on me now. Feng Sun frowned at those words. He charged out again and grabbed Yuminji by the collar. Who's that ugly girl you're talking about? Feng Sun, you idiot. Stop fooling yourself already. Who's the ugly girl? That Xiaowu you've been crying for this whole time, of course. Yuminji smiled at Feng Sun, very pleased with himself. Can you see that now? Feng Xiaowu is on my side. She's my woman. Thump. Feng Sun punched Yuminji. Yuminji took a step back, dodging Feng Sun's blow, but he frowned. How come you're still moving around? Are you really not poisoned? That's impossible. He suddenly shifted his gaze to Jun Linyuan. It's your doing, isn't it? You found out about it and switched out the venom. Jun Linyuan smiled a little. It wasn't me. Who was it then? Yuminji suddenly had a very bad feeling. Jun Linyuan didn't answer him. Instead, he looked around and asked casually, what happened to your eyes? Yuminji felt like a bucket of cold water had just been poured over his head. His heart sank. Chapter 57. It's not real. Chapter 57. It's not real. My eyes were. Eyes fixed on Jun Linyuan. Yuminji tried to say something. He swallowed, raised his chin, and glared at Jun Linyuan. My eyes are none of your business. Look what I have here. Yuminji waved the white porcelain bottle in his hand. The ugly girl had smashed the bottle of juice in his face when she tried to get away earlier, and he had held on to it. Yuminji said in satisfaction, Jun Linyuan, aren't you supposed to be this invincible, all-powerful man? Ha ha ha. Not only were you tricked by an ugly girl, she also stole a kiss from you. Ha ha ha. His laugh trailed off, for he was suddenly aware of the fact that the ugly girl had kissed Jun Linyuan. She had kissed Jun Linyuan. Meanwhile, Feng Sun looked like he had just been hit by a thunderbolt, and stood there dazed. Xiao! Feng Xiaowu was. Did she do that on purpose? She deliberately knocked Boss Jun over, kissed him, and took the juice of the fruit when he was distracted. Feng Sun was flabbergasted. He then thought back to how attentive he had been to Feng Xiaowu this whole time and all the occasions when he had defended her, and put in a good word for her. I told you. Feng Xiaowu is a mole, Feng Xiaowu is a mole, Feng Xiaowu is a mole. Fairy Muyao exulted and repeated those words for effect. She glared at Feng Sun. How many more times do I have to tell you that? I've been trying to make you see all along that she's a mole. But what did you all do? You believed her. Look what's happened now. You've all been betrayed. She put all the blame on Feng Sun. Especially you. You were nothing but caring toward her. But what did she do to you? Did she give it a second thought before she betrayed you? Feng Sun, I never knew you could be this stupid. Feng Sun was already blaming himself. He flared up at Fairy Muyao's repudiation. Ah! Feng Sun punched an ancient tree nearby, which was so thick that it would take 3 grown men to put their arms around it. Crack! The ancient tree snapped in half and fell to the ground. Seeing how exasperated Feng Sun was, Yuminji was all the more delighted. Ha ha ha! Feng Sun, no matter how pissed off you are now, it won't change the fact that Feng Xiaowu is on my side now. What did you say? I killed her? Ha ha ha! How can you be so stupid? Feng Sun stared at Yuminji with bloodshot eyes. But you were chasing her into the river when we arrived. I saw it with my own eyes. Since he had bragged about Feng Xiaowu's defection, Yuminji had to stick to the story. He would lie through his ass if necessary. Hence, Yuminji smirked, reluctant to admit his defeat. Oh, me? Chase her? I let her go first because I saw you people coming. Feng Sun, you're such a moron. It's not real, Jun Linyuan said suddenly. Glowering at Jun Linyuan, Yuminji said angrily, Hey, did you just call me a liar? Jun Linyuan, I've told you nothing but the truth. Feng Xiaowu was helping me. Jun Linyuan cut him off. Pointing at the white porcelain bottle in Yu Minji's hand, he said unhurriedly, "It's not the real thing." Chapter 58 Stop Laughing. Chapter 58. Stop laughing. It's not real? Ha ha ha. Did you just say that this juice is fake? Feng Xiaowu was working for me. Do you think she would give me a fake bottle? Ha ha ha. You people are pathetic. Yu Minji yanked the cork out. If you all think that I have a fake one, I'll just open it. Pop. A puff of white powder spewed out as soon as the cork was removed. It spilled all over the ground. Jun Linyuan and the others reacted in time and stepped back right away. However, Fairy Muyao was also with them. Poor Fairy. She had clenched her fists in exultation at what had been revealed about Feng Wu. She was too excited to even speak, for she was completely absorbed in her thoughts, trying to frame Feng Wu for more things. She was still thinking when, poof, the white powder caught her right in the face. Cough cough. Fairy Muyao had been taking a breath when the powder hit her, and her eyes, nose and mouth, her entire head was enveloped in that white powder. Everyone was dumbfounded as Fairy Muyao was painted white by the powder. Yu Minji was equally shocked. He looked at the white porcelain bottle in a daze, then turned his blank gaze on Fairy Muyao. It was that same white powder again. Again. Yu Minji burst into a fury. As if being tricked by that ugly girl wasn't enough, he had fallen for the same ruse again. He could be called unlucky the first time. He only had his stupidity to blame for the second one. Yu Minji's face flushed, then turned livid. It looked as if a storm was going to pour over his head. Fairy Muyao's face was soon red and swollen, which looked exactly the same as Yu Minji's symptoms, so much so that Feng Sun blurted out, "Yu Minji, your eyes were injured by the same white powder, weren't they?" Yu Minji didn't know what to say. Feng Sun's brain raced. He smacked his thigh and cried out, "That's right. Didn't you say that the bottle contained the juice of immortal spiritual fruit? You weren't tricked by the ugly girl, were you?" Yu Minji gritted his teeth and shot death rays at Feng Sun with his eyes. The murderous look on Yu Minji's face confirmed Feng Sun's speculation. He burst into laughter right away. "And after Feng Xiaowu tricked you the first time, you fell for it again. Ha 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 ha. That's just hilarious. You're so hilarious. Ha 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 ha." Yu Minji wanted to punch the guy in the face. Xianyi, who had kept his poker face this whole time, suddenly spoke in a serious tone. "Didn't you tell us that Feng Xiaowu is your woman?" Feng Sun was laughing so hard that tears ran down his cheeks. Holding his stomach, he cracked up. "You're killing me with that joke. Oh my god. How can you be this funny? That's got to be the joke of the year. Ha ha ha." Feng Sun had been in a terrible mood when he found out that Feng Xiaowu had been lying to him, but when he saw what Yu Minji had gone through, he felt much better now. "Feng Sun, shut the fuck up." Yu Minji's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Feng Sun. Holding his stomach with one hand, which hurt from all his laughter, Feng Sun wiped the tears away with the other. "Gosh, Yu Minji, how vain can you get? You were tricked by the girl, but you lied to us and told us that you let her go first?" The rest of Feng Sun's team was also laughing now. Yu Minji flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Stop laughing already. I'm not the only victim here. You all are." Instantly. Chapter 59 He's not angry. Chapter 59. He's not angry. All was silent and no one made a sound. What Yu Minji said was true. Everyone here was a victim, for they had all been running around for nothing. That girl had taken it all. The silence went on and on and on. Yu Minji stared at Feng Sun, who stared back at him. Both were on edge and a fight could break out at any moment. In the end, Feng Sun gave in first. He glared at Yu Minji. "I would so fight you if we weren't in a hurry to find Feng Xiaowu." Yu Minji snorted. "Bring it on. I'm not going anywhere." Feng Sun waved at him impatiently. "I'm in a rush." After that, Feng Sun turned to Jun Linyuan and clenched his fists in a serious manner. "Boss Jun, we must find Feng Xiaowu. We have to." Feng Sun had to ask her himself, "Do you even have a heart?" The look on Jun Linyuan's face was as indecipherable and aloof as ever. He nodded. Let's go. He turned to leave after that. Feng Sun threw a dirty look at Yu Minji and followed suit. Shielding Fairy Miao, whose face was still swollen, Xianyi left as well, his face still emotionless. Yu Minji clenched his fists in vexation as he watched them leave. I'll give that Feng Xiaowu a good kick in the ass after I catch her. How dare she make fun of me? Young master, aren't you going to kill her? The head of the elders was bemused. That wasn't like their young master at all. The teenager would stab his enemy in the heart, while he smiled mesmerizingly at them. After what that girl did to him, all he could think of were some empty threats. Had the girl upset him so much that he had lost his mind? The head of the elders couldn't help but throw another glance at Yu Minji. Shut up. Yu Minji glared at the elder. Let's go. Stay sharp. We must find that ugly girl before Jun Linyuan does. If someone has to kill her, it'll be me. Listening to their young master's empty threats, the head of the elders quietly pointed out the truth. Young master, it sounds to me that you can't bring yourself to see young master Feng Sun kill that girl. Shut up. Yu Minji glared at the elder in exasperation. He was very angry. Sure. The head of the elders obeyed immediately. As Yu Minji searched along the river in agitation, he rubbed his chin and became unusually quiet. Since their young master was so rarely like this, the head of the elders, who was always ready for a little gossip, stuck out his head and asked boldly, Young master, is there something on your mind? Would you like to share? Maybe we can help you with it. The 8th and 9th elders nodded in unison. It was just weird. Yu Minji rubbed his chin, looking intrigued. Something wasn't right about Jun Linyuan. But I can't put my finger on it. What was it? The head of the elders said quietly, the crown prince has always been that way. Composed, expressionless, indecipherable, and never letting his face betray anything. What's not right about that? Young master, you're overthinking it. Expressionless. Expressionless. Ah, I know what it is. Yu Minji snapped his fingers and cried out in excitement. I know what wasn't right about Jun Linyuan. He wasn't angry. He wasn't angry at all. Chapter 60 The Young Master's Verdict. Chapter 60. The Young Master's Verdict. Yu Minji grabbed the hands of the head of the elders, his eyes wide open. We were all set up by Feng Xiaowu. Feng Sun was furious and I had such a tantrum, but Jun Linyuan didn't even frown. Wasn't that strange? The head of the elders gave his young master a knowing look and vented his sarcasm inwardly. So the young master was aware of his tantrum. Hey, answer me. Yu Minji was vexed when he saw the mind of the head of the elders wander off. The elder replied, yes. Yu Minji was satisfied. He went back to rubbing his chin and resumed talking. Let's analyze why Jun Linyuan wasn't angry. The first explanation is that he's so emotionless that nothing in this world can disturb him. But that's not it. The 3 elders turned to look at their young master in unison, then exchanged awkward looks. Since when did their young master think with his head? Looking into the distance, Yu Minji narrowed his eyes and shook his head earnestly. No, that's not it. If Jun Linyuan really was as indifferent and ascetic as Buddha, why would he travel thousands of miles to the northern border of the country for an immortal spiritual fruit? It must be very important to him. Yu Minji darted a look at the elders as he spoke. The 3 elders nodded repeatedly at him. Yu Minji was satisfied with that reaction. Still rubbing his chin, he analyzed what was more. The ugly girl used such shameless tricks to steal the juice and even took Jun Linyuan's first kiss during the process. Given what a neat freak Jun Linyuan is, shouldn't he just smash that girl into a pulp on the spot? But he didn't do that. Plus, who is Jun Linyuan? The crown prince that has never been defeated. But he wasn't angry. Don't tell me you don't find that strange. So, young master, what's your verdict? All 3 pairs of eyes were on Yu Minji. Raising his chin, Yu Minji snorted. My verdict is that Jun Linyuan likes that ugly girl. The head of the elders shuddered. Young master, please don't make fun of us. Have you forgotten who Jun Linyuan is? He's the exceptionally talented crown prince, whose power is limitless. Would he fall in love with that ugly girl? He's not blind. Glaring at the elder, Yuminji clenched his fists and tried to refute, but all words failed him. Just find her. Yuminji waved his hand impatiently. But young master, Frozen Forest is so vast. How are we supposed to do that? Just follow Junlin. Yuminji snapped. Isn't he supposed to be so brilliant? Follow him and you'll find her. At the same time, after kicking Yuminji away, Feng sank to the bottom of the river immediately and let an undercurrent take her all the way downstream. Feng knew perfectly well that Junlin and Yuminji would do everything in their power to search for her. Hence, she didn't dare dally, but kept moving downstream as she held onto a piece of driftwood. She went ashore where the river divided into three. My immortal spiritual fruit. Looking at the transparent liquid in the white porcelain bottle, Feng smiled. I can't refine anything here in the mountains. Once I'm back at home, I'll finish that 9 transformation spirit restoration pill, and I can resume my cultivation. Her long-cherished wish would finally come true. Chapter 61 Jiuzhou. Chapter 61 Jiuzhou. The faces of Junlin, Feng Sun, and Yuminji flashed in her mind in turn, and Feng felt especially sorry for lying to Feng Sun. Brother Feng Sun, I'm sorry. Feng gripped the bottle and apologized in her head. I want to be able to cultivate again. Above all else, I want to wake up my beautiful master. So, I had to take the juice of that immortal spiritual fruit. Feng caressed the dragon and phoenix spiritual ring on her index finger. With a wave of her hand, she entered the ring in her spiritual form, leaving her physical body outside. Feng had partitioned off a small corner in the ring for her personal belongings, and left most of the space empty. A spacious white jade ice bed stood in the center of the space. On the bed lay a figure dressed all in white. Fair, slender and otherworldly, he reminded one of a god descending from heaven. Feng went up to the bed and knelt down, keeping her back ramrod straight. She stared at that stunning face unblinkingly. Master. Feng murmured at her beautiful master, who lay there with his eyes closed. His skin was fairer than snow and smoother than jade. He was elegant and poised, and looked as saintly as a banished immortal. Regardless of how much hardship she had to endure in the outside world, Feng never shed a tear. However, tears welled up in her eyes as soon as she saw her master. Before she knew it, her cheeks were wet with tears. Master, we're almost there. Tears rolled down Feng's cheeks as she clenched her fists. I promise you I'll refine that 9 transformation spirit restoration pill when I get back. Will you wake up when I resume my cultivation and activate my true phoenix blood? As a matter of fact, the main reason Feng took that immortal spiritual fruit wasn't for her own cultivation. It was just a means to an end, for it was only when she picked up her cultivation again that she would be able to find a chance to save her master. For that, she was prepared to go against the entire world, let alone Junlin and Feng Sun. She had to have that immortal spiritual fruit. Feng would never forget her master's stunning dreamlike debut for as long as she lived. She accidentally triggered the dragon and phoenix spiritual ring when she was 3. Magnolia petals drifted down, resembling pure, sacred snowflakes. Her beautiful master strolled out of that ring, carried by a gentle breeze. His robe was whiter than snow and the soft cloth seemed to flow with the wind. He stood there tall and upright, looking so solitary and otherworldly. The sky was an azure blue that day. The trees were a lush green, petals drifted down like falling snowflakes, and birds soared happily in the sky. However, the moment he walked out, all the light seemed to fall on just him, and everything else was cast into shadow and withered. He became the center of the world. He crouched down, the layers of his wide white sleeves spreading out on the ground. He examined the little girl with his brooding, beautiful eyes. The 3-year-old had her hair tied up in 2 tiny ponytails. She had delicate baby features and fair, tender skin. Her cheeks were as plump and bouncy as steamed stuffed buns, as if they would dimple at the lightest touch. Jiuzhou had always been an aloof and graceful man. However, he couldn't help but stick out a bony index finger to poke a lovely, soft cheek. The little girl let out a soft cry at his touch and slumped onto the ground in slow motion. Instead of howling like other kids, the little girl rubbed her buttocks with her chubby little hands, but still kept her unblinking gaze on him, her eyes sparkling. How cute! The haughty Jiuzhou chuckled. His smile seemed to light up the entire world. Astonished by his beauty, little Feng only came back to herself just then and was once more lost in a smile more splendid than the sun. Chapter 62 Beautiful Master. Chapter 62 Beautiful Master. Jiuzhou poked the little girl's plump cheeks and asked casually, "Little bun, do you have a master yet?" Infatuated, little Feng stared at him and shook her head. Jiuzhou found this chubby little girl the most adorable creature. He chuckled, which was very unlike his usually awe-inspiring self. "In that case, do you want to be my pupil, little one?" He had the cleanest smell in the world, so elegant that it felt like a crime to even think about defiling him. A delicate fragrance of plants surrounded him, so refreshing that she couldn't help but want to move closer. Little Feng clenched her fists in excitement, but she managed to keep her composure and asked, "Are you very capable?" Jiuzhou rose to his feet and stood ramrod straight. With his hands crossed behind his back, his long wide sleeves hung down his sides. He looked every bit like what Feng imagined an immortal to be. Standing up on her short legs, Feng craned her neck to look up. To her, the teenager was so majestic and powerful that he seemed to have the whole world under control. Looking down at little Feng Jiuzhou said casually, "Little girl, my name is Jiuzhou. Jiuzhou, as in 9 regions 1. Little Feng said in amazement, "Wow, that's what we call our continent. What an awesome name." Jiuzhou crouched down, held the little girl by her chubby short arms, and met her gaze, his eyes twinkling like the brightest stars. "That's because your master here named all the 9 provinces of this continent. Understand?" Little Feng hadn't understood back then, but she did later. Her beautiful master used to be the supreme ruler of this continent of 9 provinces, but he perished and turned into a soul which lived in her dragon and phoenix spiritual ring. Feng used to ask him what happened, but her beautiful master only replied in a mysterious tone that she would find out when she grew up. Feng knew that it had to be an epic, soul-stirring story, but she would only learn about it after her beautiful master deemed her capabilities worthy of the telling. She smiled bitterly all of a sudden. This was no place for reminiscing. Her top priority now was to leave the mountain, refine the 9 transformation spirit restoration pill, and wake up her beautiful master. After that, "Master," Feng knelt down before the solitary figure lying on the white jade ice bed. She kowtowed 3 times before rising to her feet, and reluctantly left the ring. She ran down the slope of the mountain as fast as she could once she was out. She knew perfectly well that both Jun Linyuan and Yu Minji would spare no effort to hunt her down. Any other person would have a hard time evading their pursuit, but since Feng was able to steal the juice from them, she wasn't going to be caught that easily either. After 5 years of studying frozen forest, Feng knew this area like the back of her hand. Thus, she picked a quiet meandering trail and snuck out of the forest. Feng was finally back in northern border city. Looking up at the name of the city high above the grand city walls, Feng clenched her fists in excitement. She was back. And in one piece. Upon entering the city, Feng didn't go back home right away. Instead, she quickly got changed and put back on the normal outfit which befitted her status as the 5th daughter of the Feng family. "Why, isn't it Miss Feng?" Feng had only just walked out of a hidden corner of an alley when someone waved at her in greeting. It was a middle-aged woman carrying a basket. "Auntie Wang, I see you've been grocery shopping." Feng greeted the auntie with a smile. Feng had been living in northern border city for 5 years, and all that time she never. Chapter 63 Friendly Neighborhood Genius Teenage Girl. Chapter 63 Friendly Neighborhood Genius Teenage Girl. Feng had been living in northern border city for 5 years. During these 5 years, she never gave up on herself like the people in the imperial capital assumed she would. On the contrary, the cheerful and lively Feng connected with the local people and got along very well with them. She was well known to the locals. After removing her disguise and walking out of that alley, she was greeted by everyone she met on her way. Miss Feng Wu, here, here. An old female vegetable vendor in her 60s beckoned at Feng Wu. Grandma Zhang, how can I help you? Feng Wu went up to the old lady with a grin. The weather's been getting cold lately. Is your arthritis acting up again? If so, come to my house and I'll write you a prescription for it. Grandma Zhang couldn't stop smiling. She turned to a middle-aged man next to her and sang Feng Wu's praises. Not only is Miss Feng such a pretty young lady, she has the kindest heart. I was bedridden last time from my arthritis and thought I would never be able to walk again. Miss Feng prescribed me some herbal medicines and I was back on my feet. You don't say, the middle-aged man chimed in. My boy tripped and fell last time. He was throwing up, he had palpitations and he kept twitching. The doctors couldn't do anything about it. They even told me to start preparing his funeral. It almost gave me a heart attack. My neighbors all told me to go find Miss Feng. Feng Wu chuckled awkwardly. She wanted to leave, but Grandma Zhang wouldn't let go of her hands. Please set her free. She wanted to go back home and refine that 9-transformation spirit restoration pill. Ah, the middle-aged man was still talking in great excitement. So I picked up Puppy, my boy, and took him to the Feng family manor. Miss Feng stuck a few silver needles in him and he was alive. She's such an amazing doctor. I bet she used to be an immortal once. Feng Wu was embarrassed by the middle-aged man's exaggeration and waved her hands in a hurry. Uncle Xiao, it really wasn't that big a deal. I only did what I could to help. I was glad to help. Uncle Xiao said, but it was a very big deal to me. You've saved my entire family. Miss Feng, this elk leg is still fresh. Please take it. Feng Wu tried to decline the offer. Uncle Xiao, I really shouldn't. Of course you should. Miss Feng, you're saying that because you don't have anything to carry it with, right? There, I have a clean wicker basket here. I'll put the leg in and you can carry it over your shoulders. Your brother will love it. Miss Feng, this is snow goldeneye beast breast meat. Make some jerky with it. It'll be perfect for young Master Feng to snack on. Miss Feng, here are some green orchid cabbages. They're just some seasonal greens. Please take some to make an extra dish for the young master's dinner. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. Had everyone already learned what a glutton Feng Xiaoqi was? She wanted to turn them down, but the local people were simply too enthusiastic. Led by Grandma Zhang and Uncle Xiao, they kept stuffing more food into that wicker basket. Before long, it was filled to the brim. Feng Wu was speechless. All right. Thank you so much for all your kindness. Please go back to your business, I'm off. Feng Wu waved at them. Just then. One moment, please. Wait. A teenage girl hurried toward Feng Wu with a blue and white porcelain bowl in her hands. Lin Ling. Feng Wu recognized the girl, who was her age. Do you need help at your wonton stall? Lin Ling wasn't particularly pretty, but she had the brightest smile, which was very appealing. Chapter 64 Halt. Chapter 64. Halt. Lin Ling shook her head immediately. No, my wonton stall is doing great. After you taught Wang Xiaohu and his men a lesson last time, they never showed up again for protection money. Miss Feng, here are some snowy wontons my grandma made especially for you. She ordered me to give them to you. As Lin Ling said that, she stuffed the entire food container in Feng Wu's hand. She then waved goodbye at Feng Wu and promptly ran away, as if fearing that Feng Wu would refuse the gift. Feng Wu smiled wryly. The neighbors were simply too kind to her. Seeing that more and more people were gathering around her, Feng Wu waved at them in a hurry and explained with a smile, Grandma Zhang, Uncle Xiao, everyone, I've just come back from visiting a patient in our neighboring town. I really need to head back home now. See you around. Feng Wu hadn't been seen in northern border city for the past few days, so she had to have an excuse for it. Hence, she came up with that explanation, and if necessary, the entire northern border city would attest to it on her behalf. With the wicker basket on her shoulders, Feng Wu marched on, turning back to wave at the neighbors every now and then. The neighbors started an animated discussion as they waved at Feng Wu. Was that Lin Ling the girl whom Wang Xiaohu almost took by force, because he wanted to make her his concubine? Yes, that was her. Grandpa and Grandma Lin tried to stop those men and were almost kicked to death by Wang Xiaohu. Thank God Miss Feng showed up in time and helped them out, Otherwise we'd be visiting the graves of that family of 3 by now. Not only did Miss Feng save them, she taught them a skill so that they could make a living. You have to admit, there's something so special about the wontons the Lin family makes. We're so fortunate to have Miss Feng here in northern border city. She's saved countless lives since she got here. She's like a living Buddha among us. Oh, Feng Wu didn't hear any of that conversation, for she was hurrying back home. Qiuling had been so panic-stricken 3 days ago when the eagle had snatched Feng Wu. She couldn't even begin to imagine what a chaotic state her home had to be in by now. Moreover, as the eagle carried her away, she had spotted the visitors from the Feng clan from the imperial capital. They were led by Feng Yiran and Feng Lu, the oldest and the 6 children of the clan. They were Feng Wu's cousins, the offspring of her oldest uncle. Neither of them was the type one wanted to hang out with. The brother was a creepy hypocrite and the sister was obstinate and capricious. Back when Feng Wu was first crippled, those 2 were the ones who had enjoyed humiliating her the most. Feng Wu quickened her steps at that thought, for she had to take care of the sentimental beauty, her mother, and her naive and kind-hearted younger brother. She was eager to find out how her mother and brother were doing now. The unknown scared Feng Wu. She ran as fast as she could. Soon she reached the front entrance of the old Feng family manor. 2 guards stood on either side of the gate. Erect backs, emotionless faces and ruthless eyes. One look and Feng Wu knew that they were well trained. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. She had never seen them before, so they must have come from the imperial capital. As expected, when she was about to enter, the 2 intimidating guards blocked her way by crossing their sabers together. Halt! Chapter 65 You'll come to grief acting like this. Chapter 65. You'll come to grief acting like this. Their voices were cold and detached, and to them, Feng Wu was without doubt a stranger. Feng Wu's face was colder. Her limpid bright eyes now had a chilly look in them. Before she could say anything, a taunting female voice came from within. Why, who do we have here? Who's making all that noise outside the Feng manor? The voice belonged to a teenage girl wearing a light pink dress. She came out of the front gate and scanned Feng Wu from head to toe in a picky way. On the alert, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. This was Feng Lu, the 6th daughter of their generation in the Feng clan, who was known as Miss Feng the 6th. Back when Feng Wu was still the unmatched genius girl, Feng Lu was such a sweet talker and would follow Feng Wu around wherever she went. However, after Feng Wu was crippled, Feng Lu was the first to twist the knife in her back. Feng Lu stared at Feng Wu. 5 years had passed and the then influential genius girl was now a mere good-for-nothing in a plain dress with a wicker basket on her back. However, her face was still so beautiful that Feng Lu wanted to destroy it. At that thought, Feng Lu smirked. I see we've got a beggar here. How dare you act out here? Throw her out. Her contempt, taunts, and arrogance sounded so righteous. Feng Wu snorted inwardly. In this world where martial prowess was valued above all else, it was only natural that one's ability to fight was their most important quality. Luckily, she had already gotten hold of the juice of the immortal spiritual fruit. Given enough time, she would refine the 9 transformation spirit restoration pill, which would solve all her problems. Feng Wu didn't say anything to Feng Lu. She only gave the latter a casual nod, then stepped into the house. Feng Lu didn't expect to get such a calm reaction from Feng Wu after doing all she could to provoke the latter. Moreover, the look Feng Wu gave her made her feel like a frivolous quibbling child. It was so frustrating. Clenching her fists, Feng Lu cried out as Feng Wu walked away from her. Stop there, Feng Wu! However, Feng Wu neither stopped nor reacted to her. Keeping her back ramrod straight, she kept walking at a steady yet brisk pace. Feng Lu waved her fists. Feng Wu, how dare you ignore me? She ran after Feng Wu wanting to hit her, but was stopped by a big strong hand. Brother! Feng Lu looked up at her brother, exasperated. Let go of me, brother. That brat ignored me. Who does she think she is? Does she think she's still that famous genius? Bah! Feng Yiran, the eldest son of their generation in the Feng clan, was 18. Good-looking and tall, he had what it took to make girls squeal in excitement. However, he was sneering now. Brother. Feng Lu glared at Feng Yuan. Have you forgotten already? When Feng Wu was still that genius back then, everyone idolized her and she almost took your position as clan heir. And you're helping her now. Feng Yuan thought his own sister a hopeless fool. It didn't do her any good to speak everything that was on her mind. This girl was indeed spoiled. Lu heir, smart men never have to tackle their enemies themselves. Feng Yuan rubbed Feng Lu's head affectionately. You'll come to grief if you keep acting this way. Chapter 66 Sob. Xiaowu. Chapter 66. Sob. Xiaowu. However, Feng Lu, the spoiled girl, brushed off his advice. Of course you have to do it yourself. Where's the fun in watching the action on the side? Who the hell does Feng Wu think she is? I'm going to give her a hard time, I mean it. After those words, Feng Lu threw off Feng Yuan's hand and rushed back inside the house, smirking as she ran. I'd like to see if she can stay this calm when she sees her mother and brother. When Feng Wu entered the middle court, still carrying the basket, what she saw infuriated her instantly. Her innocent younger brother was doing hard manual work in the spacious courtyard. He was naked to the waist and she could make out some welts on the fair skin of his back. Covered in sweat, he was panting as he carried some bricks around. He was moving them across the courtyard. Carrying bricks? Feng Wu's eyes widened. Kaiwe, Feng Lu's maid who had grown up with her, stood there with an inky black whip in her hand. She cracked it loudly in the empty air and berated Feng Wu's younger brother like an exploitative supervisor. Faster! Finish your task and don't even think about shirking. The young master and my mistress have made it clear that you're not resting until you've finished moving all 10,000 bricks. Feng Wu's beautiful mother was weeping like a pear blossom soaking in the rain. Xiaoqi, my poor Xiaoqi. Why isn't your sister here, Xiaoqi? Are you alright? Does it hurt? Her mother wasn't called a beauty for nothing. Back in her day, she was deemed the most beautiful woman in the Zhenwu Empire. Her skin was fairer than snow. Her hands were so soft that they looked boneless, and she moved in the most graceful manner. In a word, her beauty was breathtaking. Now that she was crying, she seemed to outshine the sun, the moon, and heaven and earth. The beautiful lady then tried to run over to Feng Xiaoqi to help him, but Xiaoma, Feng Lu's other maid, grabbed her hand and stopped her. Gazing at the weeping lady, Xiaoma turned to look the other way. The lady was so beautiful, and her crying only made her more attractive. Even Xiaoma, who was a girl and Feng Lu's maid, couldn't help but feel touched by the lady's weeping. If it were up to her, she would readily loosen her grip and help the lady out. Feng Wu put down the basket and shouted, "Stop!" All eyes turned to her instantly. Feng Xiaoqi was the first to react. He was the seventh son of the Feng family and Feng Wu's own brother. Sister. Feng Xiaoqi grew up under Feng Wu's wing, and during the past 3 days of being tormented and abused, he had never stopped praying that his godlike big sister would descend the next moment and rescue him from this misery. Although his sister was deprived of all her cultivation, Feng Xiaoqi firmly believed that nothing in this world could beat his genius sister. Feng Xiaoqi yelped, then hurtled toward Feng Wu like a cannonball, so fast that the others didn't have time to react. "Sister, look what they did to me." Wrapping his arms around Feng Wu's neck, Feng Xiaoqi whined loudly. Xiaowu sobbed. The beautiful lady also broke free of Xiaoma's grip. More precisely, Xiaoma let her go on purpose. All her weeping did nothing to mar her stunning beauty. Instead, it only accentuated how appealing she was. Stumbling toward Feng Wu until she caught her daughter by the sleeve, the slim, beautiful lady looked so delicate and touching. "Sup, Xiaowu, my Xiaowu. You're finally back." Feng Wu was the real pillar of this family of 3. The corner of her mouth twitching a little, Feng Wu rubbed her forehead in resignation. Chapter 67 Nice Try. Chapter 67 Nice Try. Despite her unquestionable beauty, Feng Wu's mother was, well, let's just say that she wasn't the sharpest tool in the box. She had lost most of her memory due to some unknown incident, and she only had the intelligence of a little girl. Hence, compared with the 12-year-old Feng Xiaoqi, their beautiful mother felt more like the youngest person in the family. As a result, Feng Wu had been the backbone of the family for the past few years, despite the fact that she wasn't an adult yet. Feng Wu's heart went out to the two family members weeping on each of her shoulders. She rubbed Feng Xiaoqi's head, then gently wiped away the tears from her beautiful mother's cheeks. How beautiful her mother was! Her eyes were clear and innocent and her wispy eyelashes were dark and glossy. Whenever her mother cried, Feng Wu felt like crying with her. A few steps away, Xiaoyu's grip on the whip tightened. She thought about rebuking them, but decided otherwise when she remembered Feng Wu's famed toughness. Just then, Feng Lu stormed in after Feng Wu. A crooked smile emerged on her face when she caught sight of the crying trio. What do we have here? Why all the tears? Is someone getting thrown out now? Feng Xiaoqi felt sick to his stomach just looking at Feng Lu, and blue veins popped on his fair, smooth forehead. You're an evil person. I hate you. Grabbing the black whip from Xiaoyu's hand, Feng Lu smirked and pressed, Tell me, what's so evil about me? Feng Xiaoqi gritted his teeth. With his sister back, he felt much more self-assured now. He straightened his back and lambasted her. You tortured me and forced me to move 10,000 bricks every day. I had to carry them from there to here yesterday, and you ordered me to carry them back over there today. What kind of request is that if it isn't torture? Playing with the black whip, a half-smile on her face, Feng Lu threw a sidelong glance at Feng Xiaoqi. My dear younger brother, you broke my glazed purple jade piece first. What's wrong with punishing you with some manual work? I didn't do it. You dropped it yourself. Feng Xiaoqi was so indignant at being wronged. He was all the reply Feng Lu gave him. Flipping the whip in her hand, she smirked in an arrogant manner. You haven't finished your task today. Get on with it or I'll double it tomorrow. Sister. Feng Xiaoqi was obviously intimidated by Feng Lu. He then turned to Feng Wu, looking as pitiful as a puppy. Rubbing his head, Feng Wu shifted her gaze from Feng Lu to Feng Yiran. Feng Lu was impossible to reason with. Would Feng Yiran be equally shameless? Turning her limpid eyes on Feng Yiran, Feng Wu asked calmly, Brother, what do you have to say about this? Feng Yiran's face remained impassive and he looked as reserved and elegant as a son of a respectable family should. Keeping his left hand behind his back, he frowned and stared at Feng Wu reproachfully. Wu, we've accepted the fact that you're no longer fit for cultivation, but how could you let the same thing happen to Xiaoqi, our brother? On guard, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Feng Yiran went on accusing Feng Wu in that self-righteous tone. Xiaoqi wasn't the most talented young man out there, but he wasn't useless either. He already started on his cultivation in the imperial capital back then, but it's been 5 years. Why is he still only a level 1 spiritual master? Wu, even if you're jealous of Xiaoqi, how could you bring yourself to cripple him as well? The lofty and fatherly-sounding accusation instantly trapped Feng Wu in an awkward position. Feng Yiran, nice try. Chapter 68. What are you talking about? Chapter 68. What are you talking about? What Feng Yiran said was an accusatory threat against Feng Wu. All eyes were on Feng Wu now, waiting for her explanation. Feng Xiaoqi had already been a level 1 spiritual master 5 years ago, but why had he stayed that way after all this time? Of course Feng Wu knew the reason for it, but she wasn't going to make it known yet as it was a secret. Feng Xiaoqi stopped Feng Wu and glared at Feng Yiran. It's my own fault. Why are you blaming my sister? She's the best sister. Better than you can ever imagine. You'll never understand. That's right. Their beautiful mother glared at Feng Yiran as well. Feng Wu was gratified by their support. Because of their unconditional faith and care, a once lion-hearted secret agent had learned the warmth of kinship, which was why she had been able to endure her miserable defeat 5 years ago. She needed them as much as they needed her. Feng Yiran frowned, looking displeased. He had tried a few things in the past 3 days. He wanted to drive a wedge between Feng Wu and the mother and son by throwing mud at Feng Wu, but those two were the most stubborn fools who shook their heads at all the temptations he had to offer. They refused him time and time again. Nothing he said would get through. Feng Yiran was at a loss. Feng Wu was useless now. Why did they still put so much faith in her and believe that she could solve all their problems? What was so special about Feng Wu? Feng Wu gave Feng Iran a half-smile. Brother, anything else? Feng Iran frowned and assumed a dignified air. If you can't teach Xiaoqi well, I'll do it. Carrying bricks might look like punishment, but it's actually a way to temper his mind and strengthen his body, so that he can progress in his cultivation. To subdue his spirit and exhaust his muscles, so that great responsibility can be thrust upon him? That's some very big claim. Brother, can you even convince yourself? Feng Wu asked sarcastically. Feng Iran clenched his left fist behind his back. This Feng Wu girl. She was useless now, but that didn't change her natural imposing manner. She was as proud and intimidating as ever, and one couldn't help but flinch at her presence. How annoying! Jun Linyuan and the others had no idea what was going on in the Feng family home. Right now they were on their way out of frozen forest. Feng Sun was pissed the whole time. So much so that he jumped into a tree and shouted at the top of his lungs. He scared the magical creatures in the neighborhood, who thought that they were under attack, and they fled in confusion. However, one good thing about Feng Sun was that his temper went as quickly as it came. He felt much better afterward. Once he calmed down a little, Feng Sun began to feel a sense of guilt. He would steal a glance at Jun Linyuan every now and then as they walked. Jun Linyuan obviously noticed this, but his eternal poker face betrayed nothing. Feng Sun wasn't bold enough to talk to Jun Linyuan directly, so he turned to Xianyi instead. Xian the second, Feng Sun said in a low, furtive voice. What? Xianyi gave him a stern look. Feng Sun whispered, look at Boss Jun. Do you think he's acting weird? What are you talking about? Xianyi frowned. Chapter 69. Are we really visiting the Feng family? Chapter 69. Are we really visiting the Feng family? He's not angry. Feng Sun snapped. We've traveled this far from the imperial capital just for that immortal spiritual fruit. Now that it's gone, Boss Jun doesn't seem to mind at all. Don't you find that strange? Xianyi tilted his head and pondered the question. You do see what I'm getting at, don't you? Don't you find it strange too? Feng Sun stared at Xianyi unblinkingly with his big pretty eyes, eager for a response. However, Xianyi shook his head. No, I don't find it strange. But why? Feng Sun raised his voice in vexation, but covered his mouth almost immediately and went back to whispering. Why don't you find it strange? It's the strangest thing. And there's more. Which is? Boss Jun was actually lost in thought. I've been watching and his mind is actually capable of wandering off. Holy crap, Feng Sun almost thought that he had been sucked into another universe. Xianyi found him ridiculous. What's so strange about that? It's not if it happened to anyone else, but this is Jun Linyuan we're talking about here. As in the Jun Linyuan. His mind wandered off. Xianyi was speechless and shook his head. I think that Feng Xiaowu did this to you. You're suspicious of everything now. You really think that's normal? Feng Sun asked again. Yes. It's only in my head. Yup. But. Just keep walking. All right. A few moments later, Feng Sun turned to Xianyi again. But I still find it strange. Boss Jun is so smart and there's no way that he can't track Feng Xiaowu down. But this time we have no leads whatsoever. That just doesn't make sense. He was Jun Linyuan, the guy who could track down the enemy general all by himself when he was only 7. How was it possible that he couldn't find a single girl? That didn't make sense. Not at all. Xianyi ignored him and marched on. Feng Sun scratched his head. Was he being overly suspicious? He blamed it all on Feng Xiaowu. At that thought, Feng Sun turned his mind to the girl again. That brat. If she shows up again, Once he switched to his chatterbox mode, Feng Sun couldn't stop. Running up to Jun Linyuan, he asked cheerfully, Boss Jun, where are we going now? Jun Linyuan didn't reply, but Fairy Muyao on the other side said loudly, didn't we agree that we'd visit the Feng family after this? You all said you were going to see Feng Wu. Young Lord Feng, don't tell me you forgot. Fairy Muyao couldn't care less about the immortal spiritual fruit, nor did Feng Xiaowu pose any threat to her. However, she couldn't get over what Feng Sun had told her. The guy called Feng Wu a beauty and said that the crown prince was still betrothed to Feng Wu. Feng Sun smacked his forehead. Shit, I forgot all about that. Boss Jun, are we really visiting the Feng family now? All eyes turned to Jun Linyuan and everyone waited for his decision. No matter what the others said, it was all up to Jun Linyuan. The look on the crown prince's face was indecipherable. They seemed to see a flicker in his eyes, but nothing was there when they looked again. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Sun a non-committal look. Do whatever you want. Chapter 70. Sister, why is your hand so cold? Chapter 70. Sister, why is your hand so cold? Do whatever I want. Feng Sun was surprised by that reply, then rejoiced. Ha ha ha, since Boss Jun said we can do whatever we want, the decision is made then. We're going to the Feng family manor. Since we've come all the way to northern border city, I'm not leaving until I see Feng Wu. Fairy Muyao said in her head. Neither will I. Hence she promptly offered her support. That's right. We're going. We'll see what Feng Wu looks like now. The team's mood was lifted right away by the decision. Everyone was in high spirits, especially Feng Sun. Running around Jun Linyuan, he winked at the latter. Boss Jun, ho ho ho. Boss Jun, ha ha ha. The corner of Jun Linyuan's mouth twitched and he turned away. And so, when they reached the entrance to the Feng manor, Feng Wu and Feng Iran were still standing there, staring at each other. Just then He-chan, Feng Iran's valet, arrived in a hurry. He looked anxious but his eyes twinkled in excitement. Young master, He-chan went up to Feng Iran and whispered something in his ear. What? Feng Iran looked shaken and could no longer maintain that reserved, elegant demeanor. He cried out in surprise. His Royal Highness is outside with his men. And young lords Feng and Xian are both here. Feng Lu's eyes lit up and she was practically glowing. Her voice trembled with excitement. His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince is here? Right outside. He-chan was shaking nervously as he nodded. Yes, just outside. Feng Iran forgot all about Feng Wu and her family. He dashed out hastily, unable to keep his composure at all. Jun Linyuan was here, the almighty crown prince whom the Feng family had been playing up to, but with nothing to show for it. Feng Iran and Feng Lu had come all the way here from the imperial capital, just to get a chance to meet Jun Linyuan. Now that the opportunity was on their doorstep, how could Feng Iran not be exhilarated? The senior members of the clan had promised him the position of clan chief if he could somehow build a tie between the Feng clan and the crown prince. Ignoring how shaken he was, Feng Iran ran out as fast as he could. Feng Lu shook all over from the excitement and her eyes shone. She no longer took any notice of Feng Wu, for Jun Linyuan was her greatest interest. Feng Lu ran out as well, almost as fast as Feng Iran had. The brother and sister were soon out of sight. Before they knew it, Feng Wu and her family were the only ones left in the courtyard. However, Feng Wu had never felt so irritated. Jun Linyuan? Feng Sun? Xianyi? Why on earth were they here? Had they discovered that Feng Xiaowu and Feng Wu were the same person? And had they found out that she had stolen the juice? Feng Wu's chest heaved and her heart raced at that thought, so fast that she thought it was going to jump out of her mouth. Sister, why is your hand so cold? Feng Xiaoqi looked at Feng Wu nervously. Sister, are you all right? No, she wasn't all right at all. She had been a wolf in a lamb's skin in Jun Linyuan's team, and had used Yu Minji to steal the juice during the chaos. What was more is that she had kissed Jun Linyuan. Holy shit. Chapter 71. Stunning. Chapter 71. Stunning. Sister, why are you blushing? Are you all right? Feng Xiaoqi asked anxiously. Feng Wu took a deep breath and was going to reply when Feng Xiaoqi said, Sister, is His Royal Highness the same crown prince that you used to be engaged to? Feng Wu was speechless. Blinking his clear, innocent big eyes, Feng Xiaoqi eyed Feng Wu suspiciously. So, are you nervous because of him? Sister, are you actually? No. Feng Wu cut him off immediately, clenching her fists to demonstrate how resolute she was. Feng Xiaoqi looked even more suspicious. On the other side, her beautiful mother was still holding onto Feng Wu's sleeve, all teary-eyed. She looked so delicate and vulnerable that it would pain anyone to see her that way. "Mom, what's wrong?" Feng Wu asked her weeping mother, very concerned. With her fair, smooth hands, the beautiful lady caressed Feng Wu's hair, face, and clothes in turn. Tears rolled down her cheeks and dampened her clothes. Feng Wu felt even more sorry for her. "Mom, what's going on?" "It's all my fault." Choking with sobs, the beautiful lady took Feng Wu's hands. "I failed in my task as a mother. Look, your hair is so dirty and it smells. And your skin, it's filthy. And your clothes. You're the 5th daughter of the Feng family. You shouldn't be wearing such coarse material. It's a humiliation for someone of your status." Her beautiful mother went on, still sobbing. "You're supposed to dress elegantly, eat nice food, enjoy the finest materials, and smile without showing your teeth like a true, graceful young lady should. But look at you, you're living as rough as a wild monkey. It just pains me to see you this way." Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. All her mother ever wanted was to make her into the typical young lady of an eminent family, who barely ever left her bedchamber. In her mind, that was the only way of living suitable for Feng Wu. However, that was never going to happen. "Come, let's prep you. You cannot walk around looking like that." Crown prince or not, her beautiful mother couldn't care less. Feng Wu was all she cared about. Well, maybe Feng Xiaoqi would pop into her head every now and then. Feng Wu was eager to wash off the evidence she had brought back from Frozen Forest as well. Otherwise, Jun Linyuan would definitely pick up something with his sharp eyes. Hence, for the very first time, Feng Wu nodded happily at her mother's request. Sure. The beautiful lady's biggest hobby was to dress Feng Wu up. Consequently, in the last 5 years, she had spent all her spare time making clothes for Feng Wu all by herself. One had to admit that when it came to getting someone polished up, the lady was an expert. Feng Wu didn't want the whole shebang, but she eventually succumbed to her mother's tears. Anyway, she had already come up with an idea to repulse Jun Linyuan. When Feng Wu cleaned herself up and came out in splendid attire, Feng Xiaoqi was the first to express his astonishment. "OMG! You?" Feng Xiaoqi covered his mouth in shock, his eyes popping out. "Who are you? Are you really my sister? Really?" Feng Wu usually never put any effort into what she wore, and so far all her mother's attempts to dress her up had failed. Hence, despite her stunning beauty, other people only saw her walking around barefaced and in the plainest clothes. However, now that Feng Wu was rigged out in her best, she looked stunning. Chapter 72 Heaven's Secrets Must Not Be Divulged. Chapter 72. Heaven's Secrets Must Not Be Divulged. Feng Wu had given it some thought. Knowing that Jun Linyuan disliked a dull beauty the most, and since she couldn't change her face, she would do something about her temperament and make sure that Jun Linyuan would dislike her so much that he couldn't leave soon enough. At that moment, Feng Yiran and Feng Lu had reached the front gate. Seeing the group of people outside, Feng Yiran was so excited that he didn't know where to put his hands. After all, the Feng clan had declined to the point that it was no longer one of the 9 major clans, whereas Jun Linyuan was the future ruler of their supreme empire. "Your Royal Highness." Lifting the lower hem of his robe, Feng Yiran knelt down. Feng Lu held her breath and lowered her gaze, looking as obedient as a lamb. She followed suit and knelt down after Feng Yiran. Jun Linyuan's haughty gaze brushed over the tops of their heads. Heart-pounding, Feng Lu couldn't help but look up, trying to steal a glance of Jun Linyuan. She saw his dark eyebrows and deep-set eyes, which had a sharpness to them that gave her the chills. Her gaze moved to his prominent, elegant nose, emotionless lips, and his well-contoured face, which reminded her of a marble sculpture. He had a noble status, he was unbelievably powerful, and he looked so unattainable that it only made him all the more attractive. Feng Lu's gaze then met Jun Linyuan's. Jun Linyuan frowned out of habit, while Feng Lu became ecstatic. She trembled all over. Did the crown prince look at her? Was he attracted to her a little? The thought gave Feng Lu the shivers, as if a current had run down her spine, and she felt like she was eating honey. She could barely control the grin on her face. The others had no idea of the story Feng Lu was concocting in her head. Jun Linyuan gave Feng Yiran a nonchalant glance and a slight nod of his head. He then marched in before Feng Yiran rose to his feet, acting as if the latter didn't exist. Feng Yiran only found Jun Linyuan's indifference the most natural reaction. Straightening his robe, he hastily followed the crown prince in. Jun Linyuan walked at the very front with a grim face. From his matter-of-fact manner, one almost thought that this was Jun Linyuan's own palace instead of the Feng family manor. Feng Yiran walked behind him. Since he didn't dare speak to Jun Linyuan, he cupped his hands at Feng Sun and smiled obsequiously at the latter. "Young Lord Feng, it's been a while since we last met in the imperial capital." To Jun Linyuan, Feng Sun acted like an attendant, but the latter was as condescending as a young noble lord should be when talking to Feng Yiran. Darting a look at Feng Yiran, he replied with a casual, Feng Yiran asked in an oily voice, "Young lord, would you be so kind as to enlighten me on the purpose of His Royal Highness's visit today?" Feng Sun gave him a half-smile. "I think the Feng clan might climb up the social ladder again." "What?" Feng Yiran was at a loss. "Climb up the social ladder." His eyes lit up all of a sudden. The Feng clan used to be one of the 9 major clans, albeit the most inferior one. However, it dropped out of that ranking when Feng Wu was crippled. "Young Lord Feng, do you mean?" Feng Lu cried out in surprise, then covered her mouth. Feng Sun smiled mysteriously. As the saying goes, heaven's secrets must not be divulged. Chapter 73 Who's the Cursed One? Chapter 73 Who's the Cursed One? There were grounds for Feng Sun's speculation. Since Jun Linyuan was still betrothed to Feng Wu, it was very likely that the Feng clan would benefit from the marriage, unless Feng Wu ruined the opportunity herself. Hence, Feng Sun acted on his own imagined cleverness and added, "They say that the Feng clan is the phoenix maker. I can see that now one." However, Feng Lu took it completely the wrong way. As an expert in self-delusion and filling in the gaps of a story herself, her heart raced when she heard Feng Sun's comment. The phoenix maker. A girl with the status of a phoenix that could elevate the whole clan. Feng Wu was definitely out of the question, so the most promising girl left in the clan was. Feng Lu felt the blood rush to her head at that thought. Gosh, the crown prince. The crown prince had feelings for her. Feng Lu clenched her fists and trembled in excitement. No one knew about all the wild imaginings in Feng Lu's head. Feng Yiran watched as Jun Linyuan headed for the middle court, and his stomach lurched as he recalled that Feng Wu was right there. Deeming Feng Wu a stubborn, stupid girl, he presumed that Feng Wu had to hold a grudge toward the crown prince for breaking off the engagement. Fearing that the resentful girl would offend His Royal Highness, Feng Yiran ran up to Jun Linyuan's side in a hurry, bowed, and gestured in another direction. "Your Royal Highness, the main hall is this way." Feng Sun frowned. "Feng Yiran, are you stopping us from going to the middle court? What are you playing at?" Feng Yiran didn't dare keep anything from the crown prince and his entourage. He gestured with his hand and smiled awkwardly. "To be honest with you, the middle court is right ahead, but a cursed person resides there, and I'm afraid that this person will offend my honorable guests, hence." "A cursed one? Who's that?" Feng Sun asked curiously. "Well, as you might have heard, a disaster befell the Feng clan, and this bane of ours is the reason we're no longer among the 9 major clans. As a result, we banished that person here to the old manor on the northern border." Feng Sun blinked. "Don't tell me that by cursed one, you're referring to Feng Wu?" Feng Yiran was embarrassed. "Sigh. How unfortunate. My poor family." Fairy Muyao chuckled into her palm. She couldn't stop herself from grinning. She wouldn't admit defeat before coming to the Feng family manor, for she couldn't stand the thought of being outshone by a useless girl like Feng Wu. After hearing the contemptuous remarks of a member of the Feng clan, she was over the moon. Feng Sun, on the other hand, gave Feng Yiran a strange look, which made the hairs on Feng Yiran's back stand up. "Feng Wu? I haven't seen her for 5 years. I wonder how she's doing now. I'd like to see her." Feng Wu smiled. "Take us there." Feng Sun remained as haughty as a young noble lord should be toward Feng Yiran, and couldn't be bothered to show any consideration. Feng Yiran turned to Jun Linyuan. The crown prince stood there with the same impassive look on his face and brooding eyes. No one knew what was going on in his mind. He neither opposed nor agreed with the suggestion. That non-committal manner only baffled Feng Yiran further. We'd like to see her like right now. Feng Sun threw a dirty look at Feng Yiran. Chapter 74 Walking in Directly. Chapter 74. Walking in Directly. Feng Yiran wanted to say no, but that wasn't an option for him. He had no choice but to say, in that case, please follow me. But Feng Wu has a rather arrogant, resentful, and cynical disposition, and I apologize on her behalf now if she offends you in any way later. Feng Wu had no idea that Feng Yiran was bringing Jun Linyuan and the others over. Right now she was tugging at the dress she was wearing, which felt over the top and wasn't her usual style at all. However, her beautiful mother and naive brother couldn't stop walking around her with sparkling eyes. The looks in their eyes made Feng Wu uneasy. Holding her mother's fair, soft hands, she pleaded, "Can we maybe try a different dress?" Feng Wu found this pink dress too bubbly and girly for her taste, and it didn't seem to suit her at all. The bright smile on the beautiful lady's face vanished instantly, like a bright blue sky darkening at the onset of rain. Tears welled up in her beautiful eyes and threatened to fall. She looked the most pitiful creature. She was going to burst into tears with one more word from Feng Wu. All right. We'll keep this one." Feng Wu smacked her forehead. She couldn't do anything about her mother. The beautiful lady smiled with tears still in her eyes. It was breathtaking. This flying phoenix pearl hairpin, it was indeed a dazzling and glamorous ornament, but it was way too grand. Right now what Feng Wu wanted was to disappear into the background, not stand out in the crowd. The beautiful lady pursed her pink lips and gave Feng Wu an aggrieved look. Feng Wu said in a hurry, "Fine, we'll keep that on as well. But we have a deal. It's just for one day." "Yes." Her beautiful mother beamed at her. Feng Wu had decided to stay in this courtyard for the rest of the day. If everything went as planned, she should be able to avoid Jun Linyuan that way, and wouldn't have to put on any sort of act. That would be great. However, she just couldn't stop fidgeting. "Sister, are you that uncomfortable in nice clothes?" Feng Xiaoqi looked Feng Wu up and down. "Sister, if you walk out like this, I promise you that the crown prince will be swept off his feet." Feng Wu snapped, "Knock it off. Now go have a look and tell me what's going on outside. Jun Linyuan is no Philistine who will be affected by a pretty face. He's like the most haughty man out there." "All right." Feng Xiaoqi nodded and ran out. However, before he reached the entrance, he shrieked and ran back in. Sister, not good. His Royal Highness is coming." Feng Xiaoqi hurried back, shouting at the top of his lungs. "Not good. His Royal Highness is coming." Jun Linyuan and the others heard everything Feng Xiaoqi said. Feng Yiran's face darkened right away. What was that supposed to mean? Did they have something against the crown prince? Just keep it to yourselves if that's the case. It was the crown prince they were talking about. They could sign their death warrants if they wanted, but don't drag the clan down with them. Feng Yiran wished he could throttle Feng Wu right there and then. Smiling obsequiously, he apologized to Jun Linyuan. "Your Royal Highness, that was so audacious of Feng Wu. That Feng Yichi-one is also mentally challenged. There really isn't much to see here. How about we?" Jun Linyuan ignored Feng Yiran completely. Striding ahead on his long legs, he walked in directly. Chapter 75 Chapter 75. OMG. By now, Feng Xiaoqi had reached Feng Wu. Sister. Bad news. His Royal Highness is here." Looking over his shoulder, Feng Xiaoqi spotted Jun Linyuan right away. The boy's face went ghastly pale and he was completely at a loss over what to say. Feng Wu looked up at the entrance. Jun Linyuan and the others looked in Feng Wu's direction at the same moment. Their eyes met. Rumble. As if a sudden clap of thunder had exploded in their heads, everyone froze on the spot. No one made a sound. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu unblinkingly, with no idea how intense his gaze was. Feng Sun's mouth fell open and his eyes were open so wide that his eyeballs could fall out at any moment. Even Xianyi the teenage prig looked spellbound. Fairy Muyao felt as if a thunderstorm had taken root in her head. Lightning streaked and there were claps of thunder along with a heavy downpour, extinguishing all her self-delusions. Feng Yiran and Feng Lu were also rendered speechless. For Feng Wu, looked amazing. How beautiful was she? She was as pretty as a picture, bright-eyed and comely. She looked radiant and was lovely enough to overthrow states and cities. She could break men's hearts with a wink. She looked like a gift from God, and one would forget all vulgarities in her presence. It was safe to say that all the excessive praise in the world wouldn't be enough to describe a fraction of her beauty. She was beautiful beyond description. OMG! Feng Sun was the first to react. He rubbed his eyes and rubbed them again. Am I having an illusion? I always knew that she was going to be a beauty, but I never expected this. She's gorgeous. Feng Sun turned to Fairy Muyao right away. See that? See? I wasn't lying, was I, when I told you that Feng Wu was beautiful? Now that you've finally seen her with your own eyes, do you believe me now? Fairy Muyao felt like throttling Feng Sun there and then. She wasn't blind, all right? She could tell how beautiful Feng Wu was. As much as she hated losing, she couldn't call Feng Wu ugly when the girl looked this stunning. Fine, Feng Wu was a real beauty, but did Feng Sun have to remind her constantly? He was doing it on purpose, wasn't he? That was so annoying. Fairy Muyao glared at Feng Sun, her eyes spitting fire. On the other side, Feng Lu clenched her fists so hard that her nails dug into her palms. Feng Wu, what the hell are you doing? You dressed up like this as soon as you heard the crown prince was here. Even a blind man can see what you have in mind. When His Royal Highness's eyes finally landed on me, you're going to take him away. You wish. Feng Wu, on the other hand, she had never felt so frustrated. Jun Linyuan's eyes were so bright, and had a sharpness that seemed to be able to see through everything. Stared at by those sharp eyes, Feng Wu was on tenterhooks. Her heart raced and she became very twitchy. Calm down. I must calm down. The consequences would be unthinkable if he found out. Feng Wu curled her hands into fists under her sleeves at that thought. She had indulged her mother and let her dress her up like this, so that these people wouldn't connect her to Feng Xiaowu. At a crucial moment like this, she couldn't afford any mistakes. With that in mind, Feng Wu took a deep breath and walked toward Jun Linyuan, keeping the lower hem of her dress off the ground. Her steps were as even as if she had measured them with a ruler, and she behaved as perfectly as a daughter of an eminent family. She stopped in front of Jun Linyuan, gave the courtesy sign of the highest respect, and knelt down. The daughter of the Feng family hereby wishes your Royal Highness happiness and peace. She followed the etiquette to the T without an extra step or word. She looked like a human-sized puppet that had no liveliness in her at all. The girl in high spirits they remembered was nowhere to be found. Jun Linyuan frowned a little. Feng Sun's mouth fell open. Oh. Chapter 76. What good will your beauty do you? Chapter 76. What good will your beauty do you? Feng Wu stole a glance at the others out of the corner of her eye after her greeting, and was very pleased by the astonishment on their faces. The girl in front of them was the polar opposite of the Feng Xiaowu they met in Frozen Forest. Even if they might have somehow suspected her before, they shouldn't now. Feng Sun rubbed his eyes, then rubbed them again. He was scared by what he saw. What the hell? Was this the lively Feng Wu they knew from 5 years ago? What happened to you in these 5 years? What turned you into this girl? I don't understand. Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu, then began to walk around her in circles, examining her closely. Feng Wu clenched her fists, but kept her face as stiff as a dull beauty should. She saluted at the others and said, as the daughter of a respectable family, I really shouldn't be meeting any outsiders. Now if you will excuse me. After that, Feng Wu bowed, her slim figure swaying a little in the wind, and was ready to take her leave. You're not going anywhere. Feng Sun grabbed Feng Wu by her sleeve. Feng Wu could feel an intense gaze on her right hand, which seemed to prick the skin. Jun Linyuan was observing her. Caught between Jun Linyuan's and Feng Sun's attention, Feng Wu took a deep breath. She had to put on a convincing act, otherwise she would be paying a very big price. Looking up, Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun with glistening eyes, her tone flat and emotionless. Young lord, it's improper for men and women to touch hands. If your grace insists on behaving like this, I will have no choice but to crack my head open on the iron column over there to defend my virtue. That successfully scared Feng Sun off and he let go of her hand immediately. However, he still stared at Feng Wu. It was just that he looked displeased now. Frowning, he murmured to himself, "Can 5 years change a person so much?" He still remembered that unrestrained Feng Wu when they fought each other back then. She never hesitated to kick him in the groin. But now she wouldn't stop all this formal address and she knelt down all the time. It was so upsetting. Feng Sun even began to suspect that a different soul was living in that body now. How could she have become such a boring girl? Feng Wu bowed at Feng Sun again. Feng Sun waved his hand in vexation. "Keep still and don't bow again. You're not a maidservant. What's with all these humble moves? I'm so frustrated with you." As the saying went, the higher the expectation, the bigger the disappointment. In Feng Sun's memory, Feng Wu had always been an aloof yet lively girl, who was as brilliant as the morning sun. Who was this prude in front of him now? Hence, Feng Sun flipped his sleeves and turned around grumpily. He seemed to be angry with himself as much as with her. Seeing Feng Wu like this, Xianyi frowned as well, looking utterly disappointed. Fairy Muyao, who had been astonished by Feng Wu's beauty, was elated to see how boring the girl turned out to be. "Ha ha ha, Feng Wu, what a waste of that stunning face of yours. That's such an off-putting personality. What good will your beauty do you?" Feng Yiran and Feng Lu exchanged looks. This was strange. Feng Wu had been all pushy and overbearing a moment ago. What was going on here? Chapter 77, Are You Calling Me Blind? Chapter 77. Are you calling me blind? Feng Sun was so disappointed that all he could say to Jun Linyuan was, "That's it. We came here for nothing. It's so boring here." After having such high hopes of Feng Wu, Feng Sun was so upset that he felt miserable. "Let's go. There's no point staying here." Feng Sun waved his hand and turned to leave. Feng Wu clenched her fists in excitement. Were they leaving? Great. Move faster. Feng Sun wasn't the only one who was finding it unbearable. She was so fed up with playing this dull girl that she was on the verge of throwing up herself. However, Feng Sun stopped after a few steps, for he realized that Jun Linyuan was still standing there. The look on Jun Linyuan's face was gloomy and somber. Narrowing his eyes, he gave off a dangerous air, and no one could tell what was on his mind. "Boss Jun, are we not leaving?" Feng Sun sighed in disappointment. What was the point of staying here? "That's right. Get moving," Feng Wu prompted in her head. She had it all planned out. As soon as Jun Linyuan and his people left, she would go back to her refinery and make that 9 transformation spirit restoration pill as soon as possible. After that, she would be back on track with her cultivation. She simply couldn't wait. However, Jun Linyuan kept his intense, brooding gaze on Feng Wu, like the most dangerous beast ruler of frozen forests staring at its prey. Feng Wu could feel her skin burning. Her heart thumped at his intimidating gaze, so much so that she thought it was going to jump out of her mouth. Jun Linyuan took a step forward. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. What did Jun Linyuan want? Just then, Feng Sun turned his gaze on Jun Linyuan. "Boss Jun, you're not into her, are you?" Feng Sun stared at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. "I admit that she's pretty, but she's so lifeless and pedantic that there's no soul in her at all. You like her? Seriously?" Jun Linyuan drew in his breath and cast a stern look at Feng Sun. Feng Sun threw up his hands in defeat. "Fine, if you like that in a woman. Are you calling me blind?" Jun Linyuan almost sounded exasperated. No one ever dared challenge Jun Linyuan's decision, so he seldom spoke more than 4 words at a time. Maybe it was something Feng Sun said, but he actually uttered 5 words this time. Jun Linyuan flipped his sleeves and turned to leave after that. Feng Sun patted his chest. "I thought so. There's no way that Boss Jun would like such a girl. He might as well marry a piece of wood. It gives me the creeps just thinking about it." As he spoke, Feng Sun quickly followed Jun Linyuan out. Xianyi gave Feng Wu another look, then walked out after the other 2. With her hands behind her back, Fairy Muyao walked around Feng Wu in satisfaction and gave her a contemptuous glance. You're beautiful, but you're an empty shell. Too bad. She left after that, waving at Feng Wu without even looking back. She had crossed Feng Wu's name off her love rival list. Feng Yi ran through a dirty look at Feng Wu, then quickly followed Jun Linyuan out. Chapter 78 Celebrate What? Chapter 78 Celebrate What? Do you see what you've done? You're an embarrassment to our clan. Feng Lu glared at Feng Wu and taunted her. Did you think you could attract the crown prince by dressing up like this and putting on this virtuous girl act? That's just preposterous. After another contemptuous glance, Feng Lu quickly ran out of the courtyard. Seeing that the bunch of people had left as quickly as they had arrived, Feng Wu was exhilarated. She did it. She had successfully fooled them all, which meant that no one had found out who Feng Xiaowu really was, nor did they know that she had taken the juice of that immortal spiritual fruit. This was such great news. Feng Wu made a fist in excitement. Finally, she could start working on that 9 transformation spirit restoration pill. Just when Feng Wu was about to go into the refinery, her beautiful mother grabbed her hand with that pitiful look on her face again. Feng Wu could turn her back on any sort of pleading, but when her mother looked at her in that way, saying no simply wasn't an option. What's wrong, Mom? Feng Wu asked in a lower and much softer voice. The beautiful lady rubbed her flat belly and whined. Hungry. Feng Wu was speechless. So hungry, her mother's eyes sparkled, which made her look even more delicate. Feng Wu could hardly bear to look at her mother's pleading eyes, or listen to her imploring. Was the 9 transformation spirit restoration pill important? Very. But compared with her beautiful mother, Feng Wu sighed. That pill could wait, but her mother's empty stomach couldn't. So, Feng Wu looked at her dear mother in resignation. She sometimes even felt that she had switched roles with her mother. Why did it feel like she was the one raising a daughter, not the other way round? Feng Wu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sister, are you cooking for us? Really? Feng Xiaoqi, who had been listening to their conversation, was over the moon. Sister, it's been a while since you cooked for us. Looking from Feng Xiaoqi to her beautiful mother, both of whom stared at her expectantly, Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Is my cooking that good? Yes. Feng Xiaoqi held up a fist in excitement. Sister, you have no idea. Your dishes are so delicious that I can practically swallow my tongue along with them. Yes. Even her beautiful mother, who usually looked so naive and innocent, looked excited now. Not only did she nod repeatedly, she wouldn't even let go of Feng Wu's hand. Feng Xiaoqi went on singing Feng Wu's praises. Plus, there's something so therapeutic about your dishes. They're just heartwarming. Yes. Looking at Feng Wu with her doe eyes, the beautiful lady nodded earnestly. Prior to her reincarnation, apart from being a secret agent, Feng Wu had also been a gourmet chef. She had spent 3 years mastering Chinese cuisine, as well as the basic cooking styles of 8 other major countries. Feng Wu said in resignation, all right, if you really want, I'll cook us something to celebrate. Celebrate what? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.